Hello, internet friends, and welcome to episode number 126 of Final Boss TV, your endgame rating show. I don't know what that was. That was a strange noise. But welcome. Sorry that was a bit of a delay on the episodes. We were waiting for the ridiculous nature of patch 7.1.5 to be dropped, and then there was hotfixes, and then there was more hotfixes. So finally, after all that, we're here. It's been about a month, 5 weeks since the last show, but I didn't want to have any shows before all the patches and hotfixes were all worked out going into Nighthold with tier sets and also their class balance shenanigans, because it would be misinformation. And if those are wondering about the previous episodes of Rogue, Mage, and Warlock, I am toying with the idea of having one representative of each of those specs come on a, like, little mishmashy show just to throw out, like, a lot of updates. But if you're keeping up with your class and your spec in the Discord channels, then you should be okay. But every single class and spec does get 2 shows going forward in Legion, because we're going to be here for a very, very long time. But, just so you know, it's a possibility. On the horizon, of course, we have Restoration Shaman, we have Protection Warrior, we have, of course, a mythic World First Gul'dan, whenever that happens, and when 5 guilds kill it. And then I have an interview coming up with the Lost Codex guys behind the Lost Codex YouTube channel. That should be fun. But today's episode is about hunters. And they've had a bit of a wild ride. So to talk about hunters today, we're sitting down with, he's been on the show, this is his 4th time, we had to find this out. But Azortharion, welcome back to the show, Azor. Hello, sir. Hello.
Thank you. Glad to be back.
Are you ready to talk about butchery on the show today, right?
I mean, there might be more Phi's area, but I'll try and contribute the best butchery I can. That's fair.
You're here to talk about weak auras and staring at your vulnerability window bar, right? That's what you're here for?
Yeah, lots of that. Lots of kill commands. Legendaries being mandatory for... Yeah.
I mean,
no spoilers.
You talk about kill command. Did you see the new kill command graphic, though, and the new hunter shots coming in 7.2?
I can't say I have. I'm so sorry.
Like all your shots, Arcane Shot now is like a huge purple arrow you shoot? Yeah! Because we all know you're spending Arcane Shot a lot right now.
Yeah, but they are making it so we don't have to cast it as much. So their buff to the animation is kind of coincided with us casting it less.
Oh no.
Sucks.
But then to help us out with the survival side of things, here is Phi. Hello, sir. Welcome to the show.
Hello.
You're here to talk about butchery now, right? That's what you're here for?
Yes. You plus butchery, you do nice AoE damage. Butchery. Butchery. Just glad to be here.
Is that equivalent to, say, like a druid just spamming Moonfire or binding Moonfire to every single hotkey? Is that about the same?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Just pick butchery, spam
except
butchery.
I guess it's good.
I play a survival hunter as my like second alt. She, my little gnome, is just for like enchanting and alchemy. But I haven't played butchery forever, and I've been doing Nightbane runs. So my last Nightbane run, I was like, you know what? Let's try out butchery. I became a believer. It is a good spell. But as these class shows, is the last one of the pure DPS classes that have 3 specs to talk about. There's a lot to go over, a lot to be sort of jammed in here. And we will, of course, start out with some general stuff, and then we'll go into each spec. Each spec gets about half an hour of time, and then we'll sort of go forward from there. So, a little general topic. Let's talk about patch 7.1.5 and the hotfixes that were on the 17th of January, and the hotfixes that are coming out the 24th. It's never ending. So, I don't know. Azor, I'll throw it over to you first, since you write a lot of stuff and you're sort of the go-to voice in the community for this thing. So how has these latest patch and hotfix cycles treated hunters?
Well, initially it was as many might know, even those who just play with hunters, we were not very well off after the patch. And before the patch, at least marksmanship, they had this very powerful talent called Sidewinders, and it was basically mandatory. It was best for every situation. And of course, Blizzard doesn't want that because they want there to be some meaningful choice. So they basically rearranged the talent tree and made some numbers changes that made it not so good anymore. And instead threw sort of the, the DPS stick over to Trickshot, which displeased a lot of people because it's a completely different playstyle that no one has used since Sidewinders hit the beta, essentially. So, and on top of that, we were not very well tuned with it. We didn't really bring anything to the table. So there was a lot of problems there. Beast Mastery kind of stayed the same. They changed them, like a few mechanics. They introduced a new legendary, which is, because of how good it is, actually turning out to be a bit of a big deal. Mm-hmm. Some few, like all the hunter specs, they got some talent tree changes basically, and that's 715 in a nutshell. But in the case of marksmanship, they did it so drastically that the status quo build of base over a year was suddenly not very good anymore. And so we've sort of been riding this wave of them trying to fix it and then trying to make us not suck even with our best talent setup. And that leads us to where we are today with another buff upcoming on Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yeah, it can pop up here on the screen. So your first, the ones that went out last week were just like an aura fix. So it was like a tweak up on the overall like Marksman Hunter, and BM got a little more fine-tuned stuff, but it was just aura stuff. But then you're getting even more stuff right here on Tuesday, 2 days from now. There's even more. So we're talking about stuff on the show today with this in mind, but like multi-shot giving you a little more focus, arcane shot a little more focus. They're buffing Sidewinder's damage back. Was the I was told recently that the vulnerability window that was changed was actually changed again. Like the RPPM went up a little bit, but it's still like, how did that all go through now, and how does it feel now on live?
Yeah, so some of the big changes in 715 to marksmanship's core mechanics was first increasing the amount of marking targets procs you get, which is when you arcane or multi-shot, depending on single target or multi-target. You get to cast Mark Shot, which does a lot of damage. They made Mark Shot not benefit from vulnerable, which means that it is used more as a vehicle for getting more vulnerable procs. So instead of sort of trying to set up these windows, now vulnerable has more like 100% uptime. They also increased its duration from 6 to 7 seconds. Although that was mostly due to some gimmicks about if you had the right amount of haste, you could fit 2 or 3 aim shots into a full vulnerable, which made it a very cyclical rotation. And I guess they didn't want us to get haste soft caps or anything like that. And yeah, so for vulnerable, they basically made the patient sniper talent, which before vulnerable actually used to be a buff that debuff on the target that stacked 3 times. No one has ever heard of this or played with it, and many people don't even know it because patient sniper was the mandatory talent, just like Sidewinders, for basically a year, like both after and before Legion launched. And the patient sniper talent in 7.1 basically does what is baseline for vulnerable now, which is remove the stacks and make it pretty short but much more powerful. And yeah, they just basically, because it was so overpowered, they couldn't really retune it, so they just made it baseline. And now patient sniper is it increases the damage bonus of vulnerable to your aimed shots towards the end of the vulnerable. And they're trying to emphasize this sniper fantasy, I guess, by timing your aim shots so that they land in the end of the vulnerable phase and they do the more damage that way.
Yeah, it still reads, I'm looking at it on WoWDB right now, it still reads the old version, I guess, where you gain the patience of a veteran sniper, increasing the damage bonus to vulnerable by 10% every 1 second. So
that's the current one.
Right, yeah, because it's every 1 second is the new little, because at the end of it, which is, I guess, there's no real travel time to be factored into aim shot, though, is there? Like, you can really fit into...
It snapshots on when the cast ends, not when it hits the target.
Oh, okay.
So if the cast finishes like 0.01 seconds before vulnerable does, then you're still fine.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
Thankfully.
Thankfully.
Would be a bitch otherwise.
And how about, so Azor just wrapped up a little bit about BM and marksmanship, but Survival Hunter Phi, a bit happened to Survival. You got like a whole new mechanic with Waylay, and you got those fancy new trap animations. And speaking of butchery, if you haven't seen it yet, the new butchery animation coming in 7.2 and the patch on the horizon actually isn't just bear thrash. So if you haven't seen that yet, hunters, you should go check that out on YouTube. There are some videos of showing the new animations, but it looks nice. But Phi, how has the 7.1.5 and then the hotfix cycle been for survival hunters?
Well, to be honest, compared to the other two specs, survival started 7.1.5 quite strong. It's just what the amount of pulses and average like survival is going to put out on worker logs, which shape how community perceives survival hunters, was quite small, and they weren't really experienced at playing the class. It was kind of undervalued. But overall, 7.1.5 started quite strong for survival. Our abilities were at about the right place. Not so much for single target, but much more so for AoE. But we got a blanket buff pretty much to every single ability except butchery, because it was in a good spot when the patch hit. It was in a perfect spot in the spot it's right now. But we got a welcome wave of buffs, which made us quite strong overall, especially in Nighthold.
Well,
and the new animation for butchery is amazing.
I mean, you said making you better for Nighthold. It's actually really awkward that Nighthold 7 of 10 bosses have just like ads or cleave like associated with like the core mechanics of every encounter. So yeah, of course, a class that has really simple and built-in good AoE and cleave that doesn't lose anything from doing so. I wonder if they would be good in this raid.
The thing about that, you would be surprised. The buffs which came to Wave of Moknafal in 7.1.5, it got 2 additional seconds. It's a TL15 talent, which like you press lateral like 4 times and you get 12% attack power. That helped a lot, the extra 2 seconds, because before that it used to be a nightmare to maintain for AoE. So that's a huge buff to AoE. When you have the we'll get to the 4 piece later, but the single target damage helps for AoE as well in a way with survival TL piece.
No,
the single target changes helped.
Oh, absolutely. Because I remember back in beta when I did all my testing, and I was like, Whale of Makathal looks like it definitely is the end game talent, the most difficult one. But when it was 8 seconds, man, I don't know. That was tough to keep a Raptor Strike, because only procs on Raptor Strike to keep the buff juggling, and you're balancing your plates on sticks. So yeah, that little extra time, which basically saves you a global, it gives you a little bit extra, little wiggle room there. Looks like a great little change. But anything you want to talk about Waylay? Because it's neat, but do you ever really get to utilize it to its fullest? Like, it's a cool thing,
yes,
but
and no at the same time. Waylay is a cool mechanic from the point of view when it's useful, it is useful, but it's not usually on your mind. Like, the best example which I can provide is probably explosive trap. You know, when it's waylaid, the next attack caused by the target which triggers it is going to be a miss. Like, that can be helpful to drop necrotic on bosses in dungeons, for example. That's like the most obvious one. The freezing trap can be useful in Mythic Plus for certain mobs, because what it does, it allows you to attack the mob for 4 seconds without breaking the freezing trap. So it's like a stun, an actual stun, which we lack.
The I guess does the explosive trap waylay initial hit? Because I don't know this. If you waylay your explosive trap down and pull a bunch of mobs on top of it, does every mob miss their first attack, or just like one?
I'm going to be honest. I never tried that. I presume it's going to be for all of them, because explosive trap triggers on everyone, and it doesn't say the triggered enemy. But Usually, if there's a lot of target, you kind of will go explosive trap, to be honest, unless you pre-plan really far ahead, because you have a battle button to press, and you can guess which button I'm talking about.
Sure, right. And I guess, so, toss it back over to Azor for a second. What are in this 7.1.5 and then the 2 following hotfixes, right? The ones last week and the ones tomorrow, or day after tomorrow. What would you say are like the key things that hunters out there, like BM and Marksman in particular, should notice or take into account? I know there was murmuring that Sidewinder's being buffed, like, oh, Sidewinder's is back, but what are the key things, like best or worst things to look forward to and to know about these hotfix cycles?
Well, of course, the main thing going from 7.1 to 7.1.5 is that with Sidewinders no longer being the best talent, our spread AoE is no longer our threat, our strength rather. It is that we have the choice between piercing shot and trick shot, which allows us to do sustained AoE or burst AoE of various kinds, but it's never as spread out as before.
Okay.
As for the hotfix cycles for marksmanship, what we're getting like in the next patch is basically them trying to address the playstyle issues most people have with this new post 7.1.5 world of marksmanship, which is because the main complaint is I don't want to spam arcane shot all the time just to be able to cast what I actually find fun and does a lot of damage, which is aim shot.
Right.
So they're buffing the focus generation from both arcane shot and multi-shot, so you don't have to spam them as much to gain the same focus. And then they're buffing Sidewinder's damage by a pretty healthy amount to make it, in an attempt to make it basically more viable for those people who prefer the old play style, which is a lot. I'm not convinced they will succeed with this because the main issue with Sidewinder is it's not the damage it does, it's the fact that. So this is rather interesting. So before, the cooldown of Sidewinders at a base is 12 seconds, and that means you will get on average 5 casts. If you just cast on a cooldown, you'll get 5 casts per minute. Okay. Which also roughly happen to be the RPPM of marking targets. So 5 RPPM before haste and everything. So on average, you would always have a Sidewinder's cast available for every marking targets proc. But in 7.1.5, they vastly buffed the marking targets RPPM chance to 7.2. So regardless of what you do, and you can't control, you won't have enough Sidewinders to cast all the marking targets procs you get. And that's the main issue with the talent. And buffing its damage does not fix that. So those are a few things to keep in mind, especially about this upcoming part. For BM, most of the stuff they've done since the patch has been just basically like tuning it, just increasing the damage of its main abilities. The first hotfix was a 10% kill command damage, which is a pretty healthy amount of damage, maybe like 3 to 4% on its own. And then they buffed Cobra Shot damage by almost 50%. Yeah, that's huge. And it also made the Way of the Cobra level 15 talent, which increases Cobra Shot damage by 10% for every like pet or guardian you have active. They basically made that the best single target choice, which it kind of should be, because you look at the talents in that tree and you think this is the single target one, and then maybe Dire Stable is the AoE one. But before, Dire Stable was the best thing in all situations, and now they made Way of the Cobra more logically the best choice, and also buffing Beast Mastery's damage across the board. And the same is going to happen for the second hotfix, which is increasing also base pet damage for Beast Mastery. Basically, just trying to make it on, very, like, they're trying to make it good, so that you won't feel bad about using it.
Yeah, it says right here too at the top of the notes is that the combat expertise pet passive now increases damage of your primary pets by 60% up from 50. So they wanted to be a tiny extra benefit to survival and occasionally marksman as well. But it's the primary damage for Beast Mastery, so it's buffing all of the pet damage across the board, but obviously it impacts Beast Mastery the most.
Yeah, but, well, marksmanship never uses a pet if you use the optimal build. Lone Wolf has been the best for ages, so it doesn't really affect it unless you, for some reason, not using a Lone Wolf at this point.
Right.
Yeah, so it's just a small, like, it reads complicated, but it's just like we buffed BM's damage a little bit. I think they also write it in the little developer's note.
And there's nothing in the 24th tuning changes outside of that combat expertise one. But on the note for Survival Phi, what do you think were the biggest important things that you can make sure you throw out there for all the wannabe survival hunters out there, or possibly re-rolling survival hunters to take note from the changes recently? What are the key things?
Out of all the changes which happened to survival recently, one important one is the nerf to Caltrops on, well, basically a 10% nerf. Even after the nerfs, it's still the best single target talent as an AoE talent. Like, that's an important part because everyone asks about that one. The pet damage buff, which you mentioned before, is nice because, well, it affects flanking strike, so flanking strike is a big part of your damage. So it's going to be a decent buff overall. But the changes are mostly just like same for Marksman and BM, just increasing the damage of your main abilities like Monk's Bite, Explosive Trap, Lacerate, so it's even more important to keep all your dots loading. Like Caltrops slight nerf, but it's still the best talent.
It's weird that in that, and I haven't messed around with Caltrops at all myself yet, but I guess it makes sense though, because you're already going to throw out explosive traps, and then because you replace Tar Trap with Caltrops, you get another, I mean, in this way, another button to press. Survival already has enough of those, but you get another damage source. And it does count as a real bleed, so it ignores armor though, correct? Caltrops does?
Yeah. But it's actually not that hard, because it lasts for 15 seconds, and when the dot after it expires, because it's an actual effect on the ground, after it expires, it still sticks for 6 seconds. So you only need to press it like once every 20 seconds.
Oh, okay. I thought it goes away when the Caltrop... Okay. I haven't played with it yet on my alt, so that's why I was curious. But so it's a little bit easier to rotate that through. And then explosive traps without the talent that removed the lowered the cooldown is gone now out of guerrilla tactics, so more into the talent stuff later. So I guess you kind of just hit them both roughly when they come off cooldown. So okay, that's an important thing to note. So still Caltrops is good. To shift gears slightly, have you in chat, or of course the hunters that I'm sitting here with today, what do you think of your tier 20? I'm going to pop this up with a model viewer real quick here. This is the tier 20 set. It's all based out of a tier 6 gear. So back in the day, it's sort of an homage to it. They're like super high-res new versions of it. I personally think it looks pretty fantastic. I don't know. What do you guys think of your tier 20 on the horizon here?
Well, I've just checked now for the first time, and I've never been huge in these things, but on the human in this example screenshot, it's maybe not my thing, but I could imagine the shoulders looking pretty cool on an orc.
Oh, we can change that.
Moves.
I mean, you can load up. I mean, you're playing a male troll right now.
Yeah, everything looks awful on trolls. I'm just doing it for the DPS, to be honest.
I mean, it doesn't look too bad. Your nose pokes out of the front there, so it looks okay. Yeah. I'm looking at it in the 3D model viewer. You can all look at this in the front page of MMO Champion. You just click on the model viewer underneath the different color variants. So obviously there will be multiple color variants, and there's the mythic one, and then there's like the high level PvP one, and then there's the 4 for LFR, normal, heroic, and something else apparently, because there's so many other variants on all of these. And they're all on the front page, so that's the mythic version. And you can look at the non-mythic one as well. There's some pretty significant changes and some awesome graphics in all of these, so you can go check them all out at yourself. But this looks pretty good. You like all the moving eyeballs around, Phi? I think it's cool.
Yeah, the only thing is I'm not quite sure where those glowns on Broken Isles, but that's a minor issue.
Oh. Okay. But
I mean, it's a Glon Stalker set, right?
Yes. Yeah, there are definitely no Gron in the Broken Isles for sure, but Yeah, that's why the set is just, it's based off the old ones. I mean, the Mythic one, you get a new shoulder piece. You get like a demon angry mouth shoulder that's like wired shut. Looks like a Harry Potter book. But I think they look really nice. They're really, really good looking. You can go look at the rest of these. In particular, I'm not going to plug all of them on the show, but if you play a druid, you want to go model viewer this thing real quick, just check that out at your leisure. But they're all on the front page of MMO Champion. They all look ridiculously good. So go check those out if you like.
The aloe is a nice touch. The aloe is a nice touch, I must say.
Which one? The
aloe sticking out of the eye.
Oh, yeah, the arrow, yeah, it moves when the eye moves, too, like it's wedged in its head. Yeah. The arrow does move with it. That's really cool, yeah. That could get, like, really annoying after a while if you have a weird tendency to not like things that just randomly move on your character, but if you like it, then. So let's move on to Beast Mastery discussion. So we'll break down a whole bunch of each section of these is really similar, but we'll break down a whole bunch of stuff a little more nitty-gritty with each spec going forward. So Beast Mastery up first, and then we'll do Survival and then Marksman to follow. So I had here, how does the big red hunter and pet work out so far in 7.1.5? So the rotation on beta for me was my point of contention, that it was just really, really boring for Beast Mastery. Has that improved or changed at all with anything?
It hasn't really.
No.
Not without the right legendaries anyway. I think even those who main Beast Mastery and really love it, they will also tell you that they would like another button to press or another way to interact with the buttons they press, because you're very much a passenger with the current rotation. It's the very opposite of marksmanship in that sense.
Okay.
So, you're managing the cooldown of kill command, which you have to hit in cooldown every time, die beast, and your focus, which must not go over like 120. So you just cast Cobra Shot to prevent it from doing that. And you replace essentially Cobra Shot with multi-shot for AoE, so that you spend the same 40 focus to make your pet do some AoE damage, of which you have very limited control as well. So rotationally, it's just not very interesting, but I guess they want that to be the appeal of the spec. However that works, because I don't think even the biggest DM fans wouldn't mind some more buttons to press.
I had said, and I can even bring up my old posts, because I made huge, like 1 to 2 or sometimes 3-page Google documents to report bugs directly to the dev team. And then there was some like feedback blurbs and suggestions in there too, because I would live stream all of my testing and get feedback from chat, and they would, tell me this and that, or, what if this did this or whatnot. And the one thing that kept coming up over and over and over and over and over again is, why is Chimera Shot not baseline, and why is it a flippin' talent? Because when you play with Chimera Shot, the spec has like a back and a forth, like a push and a pull, right? Like you can build and then you can spend, and then you can build and then you can spend. But without this, and Chimera Shot isn't even that great as a talent, because LOL stomp. Is that a similar thing? I'm not wrong in this, right? Is that an echoed community-driven thing that you've heard about too on your side of the woods?
Yeah, that was definitely the most common feedback to hear around when Beast Mastery released. We want Chimera Shot, we want another button to press, and we don't have any way to influence our focus regen except waiting and the aspect of the wild, which is the most boring cooldown conceivable. And the Chimera Shot would have been ideal for that, but instead it's sharing a tier with 2 other very good talents, which means it'll almost never be taken. In the latest hotfix, they buffed its damage by 10%, which made it, you can use it, but it's still not the best option for any one scenario, because Stomp has historically been extremely overpowered, and they also buffed Dire Frenzy to be the best single target spec.
There's a button joke in here, and I gotta ask Phi real quick. Have you dabbled in Beast Mastery at all and gone from playing Invading Survival 2 BM and just like it's a whole different. You just take off like half your keybinds.
Yes, I did, because for some bosses in Emerald Nightmare, Scenarios Mythic, for example, couldn't go melee, so had to play either MM or BM. I would say BM is definitely the easiest of two specs, even back then, but it's the most boring spec in the world, because you're pretty much waiting for random blocks from Dial Beast. And, like, yeah, you have 2 cooldowns which you press as soon as they're up, and that's it. Is it still like that? Probably.
It's really unfortunate. And that's not just me blowing smoke out of my butt then too, so all right. What walk me through some talent stuff though, Azor, and maybe give me some ideas and some thoughts on the different ones, and if you want to like throw out like a Mythic Plus AoE-ish build versus a rating build, go for it. What kind of talent builds are we talking about here for BM?
All right, well, starting from the top, a generic rating setup for most situations would be either Way of the Cobra or Die Stable in the level 15 tier. Way of the Cobra is, as I talked about earlier, it's the best single target choice. It's based on increasing your Cobra Shot damage. But on an AoE fight, you won't be using Cobra Shot as much. And instead, you'll be sort of much more focus limited because you'll want maximum uptime on multi-shot, Beast Cleave rather, which is activated by multi-shot, and that's why the Die Stable focus regen increase is better for AoE in general, and also because you will just be casting less Cobra shots and not benefit from Wave the Cobra as much.
Okay.
Moving on, Die Frenzy is, as we talked about, the best single target choice, unless you have the 2-piece bonus, in which case the 2-piece bonus, which basically increases the damage of your Die Beasts when Bestial Wrath is up, doesn't affect Die Frenzy, because Die Frenzy replaces Die Beast, which is a summon, with what is basically an attack. So there's nothing to increase the damage of, and that's a very bad design, oversight, I'd say.
I guess I can bring those up right now and jump ahead, because so the 2-piece bonus on the Eagle Talon Battle Gear is Dire Beast, reduces the cooldown of Bestial Wrath by an additional 8 seconds.
Actually, it's the other way around. It's the 2-piece is when you use Bestial Wrath, like the 4-piece in your notes is the actual 2-piece.
Oh, they flipped them around on the P. Yeah. Oh, did they? Okay.
Yeah. So, but it says when you use Bestial Wrath, all currently summoned Die Beasts gain 50% increased damage for 15 seconds.
So you can't.
Which is a bit funny because Die Beast only lasts 8 seconds. So it's just.
Oh, but well,
yeah.
Okay. So then. You just can't take Dire Frenzy once you get your 2-piece. Then it doesn't work. It does no like.
It does nothing for it. It's not a set bonus. It doesn't do anything. So yeah, GG. But it's okay because Stomp and Die Frenzy are pretty close in single target to begin with, and for any sort of AoE, Stomp is just ridiculous, both for bursty AoE and for just like keeping up the AoE damage. Okay. And so Stomp is going to be the natural Mythic Plus setup in all situations.
All right.
I guess we're skipping over the. Well, I want to do the movement tier 45.
So movement tiers for me are always just like usually just pick your poison kind of thing. If there's anything about, is there any shenanigans with any of these? I know there was something about how like post haste can really be really good on certain encounters where you can actually remove boss debuffs, but I don't know if there's anything that egregious just yet.
Yeah, I guess it's efficient to talk about because it's a shared tier between BM and Marksmanship.
Sure.
Post haste is the default choice, partly because of its actual movement, mobility benefits, but also because it causes disengage to free you of all roots and snares and everything like that. And it can let you break certain abilities and do them solo. For example, relevant right now, the Bond on Gul'dan, you can solo that using Turtle and then post haste to break the root and then also move out of your own circle.
Ah, okay. Very good. Yeah. Very good.
Fast Rider is it relies on you to crit to reset the remaining cooldown on disengage. And if you're doing progression, that's not really you can't really use that for much because it's too inconsistent, unless you it's a decently high chance, and it will reduce the cooldown on disengage by a fair amount on average. But you can't rely as much on it. And if you're disengaging you'd usually want that mobility increase, that speed increase after, and that's why post haste is better. And Trailblazer, I guess, is good for running between packs in a survival in dungeons.
Yep.
But they basically increases your movement speed out of combat.
I Trailblazer on my Survival Hunter. It feels good,
Yeah.
but it
does.
That's all it does. But okay, what's up? What's next?
Yeah. Level 60 is actually mildly interesting. So Bestial Fury increases the damage of damage bonus of your Bestial Wrath, makes it more powerful, which is best for single target. And then there's Blink Strikes, which increases the damage of your pet's basic attacks, which is important distinction to make from auto attacks. Basic attacks are the bite and claw and smack, depending on the pet race you have. And that's what you pick for Mythic Plus or any sort of AoE, because it enhances the effects of Beast Cleave more powerfully than Bestial Fury does.
Does it affect... It wouldn't affect Stomp, though, right? It just affects their innate pet abilities, correct?
Yeah, because only your primary pets use the basic attacks, Smack, Claw, and Bite.
Okay.
One interesting caveat is the one with the pack talent. So it's not worth using unless you have the Mantle of Command Legendary Shoulders, which gives Die Beast 2 charges. And with it basically increases the chance for you to get a cooldown reset on Die Beast very regularly. And Die Beast also reduces the cooldown on Bestial Wrath whenever you use it. So if you have 2 charges and you use one with the pack, and you constantly get resets and you can constantly string them up, you get so much cooldown reduction on Bestial Wrath that it's actually the best choice for single target instead of Bestial Fury.
It feels like you, with the legendary that gives you proc protection, kind of like Echo of the Elements for a shaman, like an elemental shaman, having the protection of not wasting a proc, then yeah, that makes sense then. If you raise your proc chance, then you want to make sure that with the legendary, then you actually can not waste it.
Yeah.
Okay.
You'll also hear a lot of feedback about how those shoulders should be baseline because of those effects and because it's way more fun and it doesn't give you another button to play with, but it gives you the same button to press twice occasionally.
Okay, it's worth it. Okay.
Level 75 is a utility tier, and it's pick your poison, though in almost all raiding cases you'd pick Binding Shot. It's good for the Lashers and Botanist. Just pick Binding Shot. And then if you ever feel like you need something else, pick Wyvern Sting or Intimidation.
Yep.
Level 90. So what they did with Barrage in 715 is that it was basically best for all situations as marksmanship before. Crows was a bit better for pure single target, but that doesn't really exist. Well, it does exist, but it's very rare. So they basically made it so that Barrage doesn't do more damage to the primary target than all targets around it. So instead of being sort of targeted at one target and then AoE around it, Barrage is just full on YOLO. You don't even have to have a target to cast it anymore. So it just fires indiscriminately at all enemies around you.
Yeah, the new Barrage animation coming in patch 7.2 looks and really translates that with the talent. It looks ridiculously cool, but it is just essentially just you are shooting straight ahead and bullets are just flying out of everywhere in front of you in this giant 120-degree arc in front of your character. At everything in front of you. So yeah, okay. It's because right now you shoot the main target and then random bullets fly out of you toward the other ones, but the new animation really helps this ability for sure.
Yeah, and it means that now that it doesn't really do meaningful single target damage, that you only pick it if you want that indiscriminate mass bursty AoE, which is not very often. But when it happens, it's kind of nice. Imagine if you just want to pad the meters in Spellblade or Luriel, Barrage might be a pick if the things die very quickly, in terms of just getting as much AoE out in the shortest amount of time. One interesting caveat, and I won't go on too long about it, don't worry, is that Barrage used to hit the main target 16 times, and it fired 16 arrows in all other directions to all other targets. And those 16 arrows would deal 50% less damage than they did to the main target. But because RNG is what makes video games really fun, they made it so that instead of the other arrows, the non-main target arrows doing half damage, they just made them do full damage with a 50% chance to actually hit. So you could get a lot of damage, but you could also do so you don't actually get any AoE if you're unlucky. Instead of they do 100% damage 50% of the time, instead of 50% damage 100% of the time.
So that's the new version. That's what it is now. That's
well, yeah, that's the thing, because now that is when they move the sort of main target effect. That is now the effect all the time. So you could, in theory, cast Barrage on a target, see all the arrows fly, and none of them will hit the target.
okay.
I mean, there's 16 chances of 50%. So you're pretty likely to get a few, but you're not very necessarily likely to get all 16 hits. You're more likely to get on average 8. So yeah, that's fun.
I mean, it does say in the tooltip, dealing an average of math physical damage to enemies in front of you. Okay.
Yeah, that's not like a funny wording. That's actually very accurate. And it's like literally, it's unbelievable to me that that's how it works, and I don't know why. I guess they want to make it very frantic and unpredictable. I don't know.
I guess.
Anyway, the rest of level 90. So Volley is the best AoE talent. It's very close to a Murder of Crows in many situations. It basically just makes all your auto shots also do a bit of AoE damage. And Murder of Crows is, as we know it, 1 minute cooldown, does kind of a lot of damage over 15 seconds. The cooldown resets if you kill the target with it. Murder of Crows for single target, Volley for most AoE. Sort of a Mythic Plus, you would go Volley usually. Unless it's sort of a tyrannical dungeon where you're dealing with, or you're trying to kill specific monks very quickly.
Sure.
And you can keep setting Murder of Crows and you can switch it around. Depends on the specific needs of your thing. Level 100 is mostly a case of Stampede versus Killer Cobra. So Stampede is not like the Stampede of old, where it summoned your stables and did a lot of damage on single target. It's now like it just throws like a Zoo. It's like a Sidewinders, but in a straight line, and it's a Zoo instead of just one snake. And it does a lot of damage to everything that it hits. It's one of the most crazy birthday retail. It's like kind of like the Beast Mastery, dare I say, the Butchery. Except it's on a 3-minute cooldown.
And it's
nearly overpowered.
It's like a column, and the column or colonnade of animals starts behind the hunter and then goes forward like 20 yards, I think, or 25 yards. I can't remember from beta testing it. But that's what's weird about it, I thought was funny, is it doesn't start at the hunter, it starts behind you.
Yeah.
So
there's a bit of positioning involved.
Yeah.
And you would only really use it for if you're just like trying to get your 54 traits and you're doing a lot of more souls and really trying not to harm yourself over it. And you can have a bit of fun with doing a lot of the burst AoE damage to the first pack and the pack on the boat and everything. But in almost every other scenario, you would pick Killer Cobra because Kill Command does a lot of damage and it gives you more. It doesn't feel very nice to use because regardless of what, it basically does so that during Bestial Wrath, using Cobra Shot resets the cooldown on Kill Command, which is your main nuke. So you might build up your focus. Bestial Wrath is coming up. You want to start it with a full focus pass. You have the most resources. And you open it with the Bestial Wrath with a Kill Command, and then you Cobra, and then you can Kill Command again, and then you can Cobra, Kill Command again, until you run out of focus about halfway through the Bestial Wrath, and you're back to waiting for your focus to regen again. But that's the best way because Kill Command does a ridiculous amount of damage. It contributes about 35% of your single target damage.
Wow.
So yeah. Aspect of the Beast. So we talked about this in the pre-show. For Ferocity, which is your pet DPS spec, it just causes Kill Command to also do a bit of extra dot damage, but this dot damage cannot crit, and it does miserable damage to start with. So you don't pick it for any situation. It's just the damage increase that doesn't require you to think at all. And that's sort of its role, I guess.
Yeah, so I was going to bring Phi into this one as well, because this talent is shared amongst the hunter specs. So, and this is not jumping ahead because we'll just cover it now because we'll have to cover it when I go to yours. And you have the same thing, right? You have Aspect of the Beast for survival. And I thought it was really weird. We talked about this on the pre-show when we were setting up, that how or why, in what world does this bleed that happens on the ferocity kill command or for survival's flanking strike, how does this bleed not crit?
Game design. It's the same game design in which one of your talents doesn't work with two set. Direct frenzy.
Oh yeah, okay.
There's no good explanation.
I did not know this until setting up the show yesterday, chat. I was like, okay, so it's just like the easy talent. You just get to bleed whenever you, so it's up all the time, but then it doesn't crit. Like, I don't know why. So I don't, because it's not gonna, Go ahead.
It just doesn't crit, and that's why it's always miserable. Like our talents, even if we're well less tuned than we are, and well good, like the Cobble is amazing for survival, and Avils are amazing for BM, yada yada. Even if it could crit, it still doesn't do enough damage to be viable, and the not critting scenario is what drives the nails into the coffin.
There's just this thing that I've seen when I made my big 7.1.5 feedback post for like the core problems with mostly talent design for Enhancement Shaman. I pinpointed 3 in particular. One of them being Sundering, aka Blundering, because the talent has virtually no scaling with anything on my character. Attack power, critical strike, versatility. But there's no mastery scaling. There was no haste scaling. There's nothing to do with haste reducing the cooldown for, cooldown reduction scaling either. So these talents that I find, and it's no surprise, aspect of the beast, maybe it's good for PvP because it has the whole like cunning and tenacity bonus because you can make your pet tank a little better, or the cunning is that you can make the movement speed when you do the master and pet thing, whatever. I guess it might work there, but it's these talents from a PvE standpoint for like doing damage, your job, right? That have really just flubbed scaling, never get picked, and I wonder why that is.
Yeah, it's a bit of a joke. These few talents. Luckily, we don't have as many of them.
Right.
That are just completely like illogically badly tuned, awful, like inexplicably terrible or badly designed. Yeah.
Very unfortunate.
Sucks.
Yeah. Well, all right. I'm kicking this over to you. We kind of already went through the Eagle Talon battle gear a little bit, but how about some notes on legendary items or trinkets?
I've brought it up in a few contexts already. The legendary shoulders for Beast Mastery are ridiculously overpowered for any sort of scenario. Gives you 2 charges of Die Beast, which is both a massive single target increase. It increases your focus, the focus return you get, because Die Beasts give you focus, so you get twice as much of that. And with Stomp, Die Beasts also do significant amounts of AoE damage. So it's the best legendary. It's very overpowered. If you have it, just play BM.
Okay.
And that's followed by Roar of the Seven Lions, which is the legendary belt for BM, which reduces the focus cost of all your spenders by 15% during Bestial Wrath, which doesn't sound like that much, but that's mostly because the other legendaries are kind of mediocre.
Well, that would really help Killer Cobra out then, because then both things that you're going back and forth hitting are
you
cheaper,
can do it for longer, essentially. The Bestial Wrath used to be baseline. It also reduced the focus cost of your spenders, but now it just increases your damage done.
Right.
Then there's the Kepler Eredun War Order brutes that reduce the cooldown of kill command every time you use Die Beast by 3 seconds, basically. So it's a lot of keeping kill command on cooldown all the time, so that you can benefit the most from that cooldown reduction. And it's a pretty good single target legendary, but for multi-target it's completely useless compared to the above options. Call of the Wild is a shared survival Beastmaster legendary, and it reduces the cooldown of your aspects by your aspect of the abilities by 35%. And because Beast Mastery spec-specific aspect cooldown, which is Aspect of the Wild is so terrible. This is not a very good legendary. Aspect of the Wild gives you 10 focus per second for 10 seconds and 10% crit chance. And there's nothing more to it. It's decent for both. Well, it's not decent. It's equally mediocre for both single target and AoE. Because, of course, it gives you the focus you need to keep up Beast Cleave and also cast Kill Command on AoE. But as Phi will tell you a bit later, it's very good for survival.
A little bit.
Yeah. And you say trinkets, as in the main trinket for BM.
Yeah, I was bringing up the if you're seeing this in the B-roll section next to me, chat, the Icy Veins guide. All the Icy Veins guides, I mean, I think almost all of them should all be updated right now to 7.15. And if there are any updates to them based on the hotfixes coming up very soon, of course they'll be updated. So if you want to check out like a written post for this, go check that out. But I was going to bring up the trinket sims real quick here, so chat could have a visualization. So yeah, I mean, you actually have a ascending scale of eye levels here. Normally trinket sims are all at the same eye level, but this is helpful as well. But yeah, tell me about Draught of Souls. What is this? This
okay,
is like...
so that's a bit complicated, and it's possibly very likely due to Simcraft not incorporating the fact that so it's a melee trinket essentially,
right?
Or it's meant for melee, and it drops from Gul'dan, and basically you press it in melee, it has a short cooldown, and it does a ton of damage in front of you. It's kind of like a Fury of the Eagle for everyone. And ranged can use it if they feel like going into melee, which is not as big of a problem for Beast Mastery because it has unlimited mobility. But it does reduce damage for ranged specs, and that makes it not as good as the Sims would indicate, but that remains to be fixed in Simcraft. So if we look past that, we got the Night Blooming Frond, which essentially like amplifies you through your auto attacks, and Convergence of Fates, which is essentially a cooldown reduction on Aspect of the Wild, our mediocre cooldown, every so often based on our PPM, which is free for Beast Mastery, I believe. And we've just talked about how mediocre Aspect of the Wild is, so it's actually not a very good trinket, but it's still our best trinket, unfortunately. So that says a bit about how no trinket really stands out as very good for BM.
I suppose that the problem with Aspect of the Wild in itself is like the 2-minute cooldown and 10-second duration. I suppose if you do make it happen more often, it does raise its sinking potential to be a little more worth it. But yeah, by itself. Yes. So, I mean, how Convergence of Fates, which I'm sure we'll talk about with the other specs a little bit too, possibly, or other shows in the future, is very different for almost every single specialization in the game. So
yeah,
is the RPPM for BM okay? Like, how many seconds does it take off on average per like cycle?
I mean, per like cycle, 20 to 40 seconds. Of course, it's RPPM, so you can get ridiculously lucky, and there will always be outliers. But yeah. Yeah, that's basically it. It's way more powerful for marksmanship, as we'll talk about later. And then there's the Night Blooming Frond, which is, it's a trinket. It's not very good, but it's best in slot because, you know, it drops from Nighthold and it has a high item level. Because haste is very powerful. The Ursoc trinket, Bloodthirsty Instinct, is one of the best trinkets you can get for its eye level. So if you're like a fledgling Beast Mastery hunter, you should probably do Emerald Nightmare, Heroic, Mythic Pucks to try and get a Bloodthirsty Instinct. Yeah. Because it will probably be quite, because it's the Mythic version of it is better than a Heroic Night Blooming Frond. And also stat sticks are powerful for BM, so it's powerful for all specs to an extent, really. So Mastery and Haste statistics are good for BM. Yeah.
Until Blizzard, there was a post about Nighthold trinket power, and that's what I was telling the my guild the other day when we were clearing our splits, is that this trinket looks kind of garbage, but before a week from now, it's the best trinket in the game. So, because they some of the trinkets are really bad, that the Shock Baton out DPS is like half of them. A World Quest trinket from Suesh. So,
GG.
Yeah. How about some more direct questions here? We went over the 4-piece a little bit, mostly in the way that you just can't take Dire Frenzy. But both of the bonuses work out well in the end, though, right? They're not bad, right? They're pretty powerful.
BM set bonuses are pretty good, with the exception of the sort of oversight that forces you into stomp whenever, well, as soon as you got the 2-piece.
Sure.
Which appears as the 4-piece on Wowhead, I think. And then Diabetes reduces the cooldown of Blasted Wrath by an additional 8 seconds. So especially, again, with the shoulders and one with the pack, you can string, like you can actually get Blasted Wrath's cooldown down to roughly its duration, which means you can string this 20% damage buff, not indefinitely, but like a lot. And it kind of fixes a lot of the issues with the spec. It makes it more fun anyway. Okay. But you might get a bit sick of, because you're probably used, Blasted Wrath has a low cooldown already, and you're probably used to doing, the Cobra kill command, and this is just going to make you do that even more. But you're going to have a bit more focus to do it.
So what 4 pieces, barring legendaries getting in the way, what 4 pieces are the most optimal for BM?
So you want the helm, you want the, you probably want the cloak, and then you want the, the gauntlets, and then you want the leg piece. This is just because like they work out to be the best pieces versus the other options you can have for off pieces. And it is because a lot of people, especially like those who have been doing a lot of Mythic Plus, they will have the Court of Stars Arcway set bonus, which of course necessitates the shoulders from Court of Stars.
True.
But even if you ignore that exists, then you still want to leave your chest and shoulder pieces open.
That's interesting that you didn't, because normally the rule of thumb, to my knowledge, because of just raw stat budgeting, helm, chest, pants are always the 3 best. So it's weird that you actually did not include the chest directly, but you said the gloves. So there's a better chest that you can pick up offset that's more worth it.
And and it helps that it's from the very first boss. And in Nighthold, certain items like the lower tier bosses, they don't drop quite as high eye level as the upper tier ones. And even though chest is a high budget item, the Arcano-Sheetin, I don't know, Horberg from Scorpion is basically ideal for piece mastery. It is basically a mastery-weighted, mastery haste chest piece.
Okay.
While the tier chest is haste versatility, with a lot of versatility, I believe.
All right. Well, it's wrap-up time for the BM part of the show. So, rule of thumb, what's your secondary stat priority? And then if you have any other like tips or suggestions for BM hunters out there.
So the short version, mastery, haste, crit, versatility, with mastery and haste being further above the other 2, then mastery is above haste and all of that. If you have the legendary shoulders, there's a lot of, if you have the legendary shoulders involved in BM, then you might prefer crit to an extent, and crit mastery, you would basically push down haste a bit to have more crit instead.
Okay.
Because crits increase your chance to get diabetes cooldown resets essentially. But yeah, that's basically BM stats.
Sounds good to me. Anything else you wanted to leave BM hunters with out there that they may or may not know about or that they should remember?
Nothing really stands out, unfortunately. I'm trying to think, but if you just follow the basic intuition of the spec, it's probably one of the easiest specs in the game. I think I can say that without getting lambasted. And
yeah, for sure.
And if you have to show this, great, because then it's also a good spec.
Sounds good to me. Well, all right then. Well, we have come to the middle-ish. Oops, that's the wrong button. We've come to the middle of the show here as I hit the wrong binding. And I wanted to take a moment to plug a few things that you may or may not have heard about, and some announcements, of course. And then we'll come back and we'll do Survival Hunter, and then wrap the show with the MM at the end. So we'll cover all 3 specs, of course. But I just plugged in chat. That was muted for like a second. Yeah, the muted part of the show. I just plugged in chat the channel and Discord guide. So this is a huge resource that I put together with a viewer of mine that you may or may not know about. I plugged this for a very long time because I am a Discord partner. So if you are not in the Discord channels, they're all right here. You just click on the icon and then the Discord link pops up and you can join the channel. So of course the Hunter one, True Shot Lodge or Meme Shot Lodge or True Meme Lodge, whatever you want to call it, it exists. You can join the Discord channel for the Hunters. You can check the pins, the FAQs, and join in the spam. I think I heard that they made a separate channel to post nonsense in to keep the stuff out of the main channels. But you can check that out there. Of course, all the current social media and ways to support the show, and then music I use on the stream, and then my schedule, and then other resources are all posted here on the sides and everything like that too. So this is where also on the bottom, you can go and browse through the World First shows, the developer interviews I've had before, and then of course upcoming shows are all going to be put here, as well as the alpha and beta coverage. It's all categorized here. BlizzCon and coverage here. You can go back. It's actually kind of funny. There is so if you go back to the last season when I had dev interviews that are down here, there's been some recent comments on these on YouTube of what like Ian or Celestalon or Chris Zerhut said back in, you know, these patches way back in the day, and to see like what has come true and what has been just like totally lambasted and just like totally forgotten about. It's interesting if you want to take a blast in the past and go back to these old dev interviews, but they're all posted here at the bottom. All the different tabs are all here at the bottom for you. So that's a huge resource. If you haven't utilized it, it's right here in chat. And then bringing up Patreon real quick, there is a huge rework on the show's Patreon page coming very soon. What I wanted to make a new announcement about is that I've talked about it on the broadcast a couple of times, and the first one is recorded. It will be going up online shortly. I've changed my mind with this, and it's going to be posted up soon, but I assure you it's there now. At the $5 pledge or above, if you want to support the broadcast, the live shows, the side content, all of it, there will be additional podcasts that are only available at a link if you are pledging $5 or more to support FinalBossTV and everything that happens here. So these extra podcasts are essentially the behind the scenes or the meet and greet of the show. So if you have a $5 pledge or more, there will be a post that you'll be able to see, and you'll be able to get a link to listen to the show. Of course, $2 or more gets you the show notes. You could follow along on the show. But the meet and greets are now being recorded, that I sit down with the guests before the show. And it's an unscripted, like an hour-long just talk. And you get to hear a whole bunch of different stuff, different just like takes on things, setting up questions and whatever. So if you want more of the guests that I interview, that is going to be a extra benefit to you. So on average, you'll get 3 to 4 of those extra a month, on top of course, the main show being there. There'll be no advertisements on the videos because you're already supporting the show directly anyway. So that is happening soon. So I wanted to get that out there, that some of you have always asked, like, where the after shows go, or where like the more casual kind of stuff goes. Well, that's moving over to there, and then you'll have access to those only if you have access to that Patreon post. So that would be up for you. But the Hunter one is already recorded. It'll be online. It's like an hour and 18 minutes long of Phi, Azor, and I just talking about the show notes and then just like ranting and tangenting. So that's how they're going to be. And if you want that, an unscripted version of the show essentially, then those are available for you over there. Links below for the Patreon link. But that's all I got to plug, other than the fact that the social medias, the Twitter and the Twitch links for our guests today are on their lower thirds on the show. So you can go follow them on there and bother them there, of course, too. Is that, Azor, you're here, right?
Yeah, I'm here.
Is that true about like the meme channel in the True Shot Lodge?
It was there for a while, but it's not there anymore.
Oh, okay.
Because then we got buffed, and then, you know, there was a lot of reposting, and we can't have that.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
Yeah.
That's pretty good, though. I heard about that.
Sweet print.
Oh. But that is that. I wanted to, I had to just confirm that real quick, but on the topic of Patreon, I want to make a special thank you to Troffles, Death Scythe Pally, and Ludovicus for continuously supporting as an assistant producer for the show. Thank you very much for your continued support directly all these many moons going forward. All right. So I'm going to talk about Survival Hunter. Let me change my scene here and bring up the Survival Hunter stuff. Are you ready, Phi, to talk about the best hunter spec? I mean, the most fun hunter spec? I mean, the highest damaging hunters? I mean, thinking?
The hunter spec.
So, first off, Phi, the welcome to Melee, how do survival hunters pan out? I mean, I put in here on the notes that dispel the stigma of a melee hunter if possible. Now, obviously, not every raid can bring more melee, and sacrificing a ranged for more melee doesn't always work in mythic settings, but, I mean, you're doing it right now. So walk me through this weird transition period that hunters have had and how survival works out.
Well, survival overall is in pretty good spot for a melee. We have a lot of mobility with disengage, harpoon, and cheetah, like more than most melees. Total is still overpowered. It's not bubble, of course, but it's a nice utility for melee especially. As a melee spec, the only thing it lacks as a melee spec is a stun. Single target or AoE stun, that's the only thing we don't have, which can be of an issue sometimes. But overall, like, we have mobility, we have single target damage, we have some utility in cases of Waylay, like I had reports of Waylay actually working on some late bosses, on some mechanics, which is kind of funny. But overall, like, it's not bad, it's not awful being a melee, because we have such a good utility in face of Harpoon, like for example, Gul'dan Heroic. Like, you know, the second empowered I have Gul'dan in the last phase, you can instantly get there with Harpoon, because it's such a long range, instantly gets you well, and you can use disengage in a plethora of ways, and you have other like mobility. It's very nice.
Yeah, I guess that's one of the biggest things to bring up right off the bat is that it's not as mobile as like a Demon Hunter that just can Fel Rush everywhere or Vengeful Retreat, you know, in reverse to get somewhere. But yeah, Harpoon, Cheetah, and then you have your personal self-heal and, of course, Turtle. And then do you ever, and I guess technically if you ever did land the killing blow on something, then your hunting party would proc too to get the self-heal as well. So it brings mobility, but definitely doesn't. It has a slow, I guess. You have a slow in Tar Trap.
Yes, in face of Caltrops.
Yeah. But that's it. No hard CC, though.
No hard CC, unless you count Waylay Freezing Trap, but let's be honest, it's not really reasonable in most late situations.
Right.
In some it is, because you know where the ants are going to spawn, but not in all.
So then how about walk me through some talent pros and cons here. Maybe talk about the difference between like a Mythic Plus spec versus a Raid spec would look like. So, and then we can walk me through the Survival Hunter talent tree, if you could, sir.
Well, first we have level 15 talents. It's Animal Instincts, Flowing Axis, and Way of the Moknafowl. Obviously, we talked about this. The best single target AoE talent is Way of Moknafowl. It gives you straight up 12% attack power. It's best in pretty much every single scenario. But that being said, Animal Instincts, with the cooldown reduction it provides, is still a valid choice in both raiding and mythic dungeons, because not a lot of people enjoy lateral striking every 10 seconds to keep the buff up. Both are viable and have negligible enough for most people difference, unless you're a mythic raider, in which case you should use Moknafowl.
Is there when I was playing Tinkery, my little survival hunter project, I was told that there is a haste amount you want to make Way of the Moknafowl feel and work better. Is that still the case with the additional 2 seconds added to the duration?
Yes, but we'll get to that in a very specific way when we get to stats, because there's a very important thing between haste and survival hunters.
Okay, sure. I'll wait for that later then. Okay, continue.
The level, okay, Flowing Axis it's not really viable. It does damage, it does enough damage to be decent if you're playing heroic or normal, but at a high item level point, it becomes useless. Like, it doesn't scale well enough to be a viable option, so you should avoid it.
It was
And it should
good.
be noted.
It was good earlier on, but I guess that changed recently with the differences in the buffs in the class, yeah?
Yes. But it should be noted, it's the only range ability which does damage, except Explosive Slap.
Okay.
When we have level 30 talents, Model of Claws, Mortal Wounds, Snake Hunter. Let's start with Claws. It's the same deal as with BM and Marksman. They don't do enough damage, in my opinion, to justify them in Nighthold. They used to be really good, because Emerald Nighthold was mostly single target. But the thing about the talents, Model of Claws is single target, but it resets if the target dies within its duration. Mortal Wounds, each time Lacerate deals damage, you have 2% chance to get an additional Mongoose Bite. And this 3, except for the Claws, it should be mentioned, is all about Mongoose Bite recharge. Like, Mortal Wounds, Snake Hunter, they give Mongoose Bite. The Claws do not. And that's an important thing.
Yeah.
Why?
It's weird.
Yes. It's important because of the fall set. When you have 6 stacks of Mongoose Fury, you get 20% damage increasing buff. So, in Nighthold at least, Snake Hunter is a default choice. And in Mythic Plus, it's a default choice because it allows you to reach 6 stacks more consistently. It does similar damage because Mongoose Bite does something like 800k on average for decently guild person. So it's the same as Klaus over the same amount of time. For the most part, like, you can find situations where Klaus are going to be slightly ahead.
And then I guess I had to ask about this too. Mortal Wounds before the 715 was pretty blah, because you can only have one Lacerate up, but Lacerate now has no cooldown. Does that put a little more, like, would you cross Lacerate and like dump your focus bar to proc more Mongoose charges? Is that any good?
Not really, unless you have the legendary ring, which allows you to spread Lacerate and refresh it with Calf or Butchery. If you have the ring, Mortal Wounds is an acceptable choice on council fights. Think High Botanist.
Okay.
But otherwise it's not good for single target, because 2% is just, it ends up to being about the same as Snake Hunter, but you cannot control it as well.
Okay.
And that's an important part. The movement talents, do you want me to go over them?
If there's anything to note, I mean, we kind of noted of what post-haste. They recently just gave Survival Disengage. This did not exist before. So now you can actually have Disengage, and you already have Harpoon. So, like, you can get forward and backward. Yeah, so.
Yes. Well, post-haste is slightly worse for survival when it's for other specs, because it blocks off of Harpoon and not Disengage, because Disengage is a talent in the same 3, obviously. In most cases, I would recommend using Disengage, because it's just the iconic, it's the most easy to use, it's the most convenient, it's only a 20-second cooldown. In Mythic Plus, for some dungeons, you would take the Blazel. It's not an awful choice, but Disengage, I think, definitely beats post-haste in most scenarios, especially in Nighthold, where there's some heavy abilities which you need to dodge instantly, and harpooning to the boss can kill you in Nighthold in ridiculous amount of ways.
Well, because you harpoon to, like, the center of their model normally.
Yes.
Yeah. It's like,
so, also a funny thing, or a little bit off topic, on Alessandra, if you use harpoon and you touch Nightwell, you instantly die. That's a funny piece of trivia information for you.
Oh, if you touch the Nightwell in the middle?
Yes, because it pushes you through the middle, and you touch the Nightwell, and it's considered an insta-kill in the game's eyes.
Okay.
So never use harpoon on Alessandra.
That's similar to how Pharaoh Lunge works. So Pharaoh Lunge puts you in the middle of the boss's model, or where their middle model was, no matter if they're moving or not in the last, like, half a second or whatever. So if they're not moving, though, you can Pharaoh Lunge as an enhanced shaman right to the mob. But yeah, I've had that moment where I've Pharaoh Lunged and gotten pushed into. Yeah, it's or you Feral Lunge right to her, but it's where she was, and I've run through multiple of the orbs and almost gotten like totally one shot. So yeah, I feel the pain of the harpoon, I guess AI, or how it paths you, for sure.
Yes. When we have level 60 talents, I would say what Steel Trap is among those talents. It's not quite as bad as Flowing Access or the talent we're about to get to. We talked about the talent before. In the level 60, Caltrops is the best option for pretty much every situation. It adds an extra button for you to press, but the passive damage over time from Caltrops is just so strong, even after the nerf. But it's like one of your main damaging abilities, and you should have as much of an uptime on it as possible. Guerrilla Tactics is a nice alternative if you don't feel like managing Caltrops. It's a relatively big DPS difference, like I would say 15,000 damage a second, but
No.
it's a lot, but it's negligible if you don't play at the like top TL mythic progression, and it's good for some fights in which is also super high movement, because the problem with Caltrops, your tanks can walk against you, because Caltrops is an actual area of effect on the ground, and if the tanks guide the mobs away from it, well, sucks to be you.
Yep, it's like playing a Demon Hunter, and you get in there and you're bursting, and you drop Will of the Illidari, and the tank moves the boss away from your glaives.
Yep.
Yeah.
Pretty much exactly the same. The Steel Trap, it's an awesome talent for some activities like Brawler's Guild, because you can pre-place it, but the fact that you need to be out of combat for Waylay to work in case of the Steel Trap, because Waylay only works if you're not in combat for this specific talent. That kills it for any other situation. But for Brawler's Guild, it's an amazing choice. It just like does 50% of targets that like health in one application, so it's like really good.
That's actually a question then. Does Waylay only work out of combat? I thought it would work in combat, but it still takes 2 seconds of not being triggered.
Only for Steel Trap. It says in the description. It's only for Steel Trap. That's why this talent is non-viable in late, because it's only for this talent.
Oh, that totally. I've never taken it before, but that is totally true. Wow. Because I asked you about this in the pre-show, because Steel Trap is a 1,500% of attack power bleed, so bleed ignores armor over 30 seconds, and then the Waylay is an additional 500% damage. So I guess, yeah, it totally makes sense. Brawler's Guild for sure, but outside of that, you can never Waylay it in combat.
Yes. Waylay Steel Trap can do up to something like 3 million damage from one trap. And that scales up with cooldowns. So it's ridiculous for when you can pull it off. But because you cannot pull it off in raids, most of the time, it's not viable. When we have the 75 level talents, Sticky Bomb is a talent which really should have been an AoE stun, in my opinion. As it is, it's just a knockback. You float at the enemy, and everyone around that enemy gets knocked back. Nothing more to say. Langel's Net, it's actually funny. I'm not sure how many people know it, but Langel's Net used to block Cephus Secret on bosses for Survival Hunter, which made it the best legendary you could possibly have as Survival Hunter. That's since been fixed, but that's a fun fact.
Okay.
And then you have Camouflage, which allows you to... It's actually probably the most useful of them all in Mythic Plus, because it allows you to skip any amount of trash without using an invisibility potion, which is awesome, because you can skip a trash, for example, at Blacklock Hold at the start, and then have potions for the entire dungeon, unlike other people. It works very well for that.
Also, you can feign into camo to heal yourself for a little bit too. That kind of is a little thing, I guess you can do sometimes, but not super useful. But there is a thing with that. It's weird on this tier, because I thought Sticky Bomb, I mean, because it's only a knockback, so it's an interrupt. But there's, again, no hard CC there. And Ranger's Trap is just a root. So the camo is the only one that actually like really gives you anything personal, because the other two don't really do a whole lot. I guess Ranger's Net probably is super troll in PvP, but
yes, it is. But you don't use it in PvP unless if you have talents, because if I remember correctly, there's a normal talent which is pretty much Tlackel's net. It's pretty much the Angel's net, and they shell Xiao. But in world PvP, it's super slow if you don't have that talent. Because it has no global cooldown. I mean, it has a global cooldown, but doesn't have a cooldown, and it's like 30 focus, so you can spam it indefinitely.
Yeah. All right, chat. It's time. We're talking about the Serpent Sting. Oh, sorry. You want to talk about Butchery and...
Level 90 talents. This is important for Mythic Plus. For Mythic Plus, no matter what you do, you pick Butchery. Why? There's a trait in an artifact which makes so that Butchery, which replaces Scarf, does 10% more damage for each enemy hit. So for big pools, like a your average pool in Mythic Plus, like 10 mobs, for example, more souls, completely reasonable for high item level people, your Butchery is going to do double damage with that trait. So it's very, very high single target, even Butchery in Mythic Plus. When you use this talent in any amount of mobs which exceeds 5, it's absolutely amazing, and you're going to be the top damage in the dungeon, like easy.
The weird thing
Especially
about...
if you can align cooldowns.
The weird thing about this right now is that Hellcarver is the exact same thing that Havoc has for their Blade Dance that was nerfed from 10% to 3%. Because, oh, Havoc has too much AoE. Oh, no. But Hellcarver is still 10% increased damage for each additional target hit. And the base freaking damage of this thing is, whatever reason why, it's 579% weapon damage.
640.
Oh, it's, well, yeah, the tooltip on WowDB says 579, but
For example, with the legendary chest, which increases your Butchery damage by 100% when you use Mongoose by 10 times. For me, Butchery does 800,000 damage for per mob. So increase that by 100%, and it's like each mob, like 10 mobs with that. And you're looking at an insane amount of burst AoE from one global cooldown. And you have 3 charges of it. So it's insane in Mythic Plus. And in Nighthold, because every fight is an AoE fight. When you have Dragon's Fire Grenade, insane in PvP, absolutely annoying, like as annoying as it gets. But apart of that, it's fallen out of favor for Mythic Plus and Laids. Like it never used to be good in Mythic Plus. For some people thought it was. But now it's complete garbage deal. Still usable in some situations, but still pretty bad.
Right.
And Serpent Sting is your default single target damage deal, because, well, Butchery is your AoE, Serpent Sting is your single target. Just think of it like that.
Yep.
Level 100 talents. Well, we talked about Aspect of the Beast in BM portion of the show.
Yep.
It doesn't crit, it's complete garbage. Then you have Expert Tlapple, which increases the damage of Caltrops, which is an important part. There's actually 2 builds of survival you can use on single target. One, which relies on Caltrops, Expert Tlapple, and that build kind of prioritizes versatility until you get full set, but like it's not as good as the Spitting Cobra for single target. And then you have Spitting Cobra, which is an interesting talent. It's a new addition to single target rotation for survival. It used to be never taken, so you never would take it for any situation, but it got buffed significantly, and it was found out that it double dips into haste. So before set you heavily stack haste, so Cobra gets battle and battle as a talent.
Yes.
It's a 1 minute cooldown, which gives you 90 focus over its duration, so it's already better than a cooldown from BM, Aspect of the Wild.
Shots fired.
It is, and it does on average something like 2 million damage. And more if you use it during heal, like 4 million I've seen multiple times.
Yeah, I was looking, wasn't Spitting Cobra like 40% attack power, and now it's 100% attack power?
Yes, it got buffed significantly.
Right, yeah.
But the focus generation is what's important, because you can use flankings like Molotov, which is just 2 set and then 4 set, and it's good.
Awesome.
Oh, it was 20 apparently. Even worse.
Oh, it was 20% attack power? Holy crap. That's so bad. Wow.
I guess getting something buffed 5 times is a little bit... It's okay to make it okay.
Yeah, I would imagine so as well. You're bringing up the tier set in there too, so we're gonna bounce over to the tier set real quick. So again, the Eagle Talon battle gear. So your 2 pieces flanking strike now has 3 times the normal chance to trigger hunting companion, and your 4-piece, like you said before, when you achieve 6 stacks of Mongoose Fury, you will gain a 20% increased damage buff to all abilities for the next 10 seconds. So both seem pretty good. They like Beast Mastery ones. They don't seem like they're anything wrong with them. They both look like they play into and shore up some parts of the spec. But I think the 2-piece is probably like the really... So the math on this. Walk me through the math again on Flanking Strike. I didn't know this.
Well, okay, Flanking Strike has... Okay, first of all, Mastery gives our pet attack chance to give us a Mongoose Bite. So Flanking Strike has double that amount by default. So, for example, you have 15% Mastery, so every attack done by your pet has a 15% chance to give you a block of Mongoose Bite. Flanking Strike had a 30% chance. What the 2-piece does, it triples the percentage at which Flanking Strike gives you Mongoose Bite. So at 15% Mastery, it's 90% chance to get a block, which is good.
So essentially every Flanking Strike gives you a stack.
Yes, pretty much.
Right.
Which is amazing for the reason of uptime on 4-piece. The average uptime for most fights, at least for me, but I'm speaking about every single fight in Nighthold because I looked at the logs, is 54% and up uptime on full set. Because you can, with the 2 set, you can reach 6 stacks pretty much every single time, bar a few. So you have very high uptime, and it averages out to be like 5-6% damage increase, but it's important when it's up, not how long it's up.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yes. Especially because, well, we are kind of a bursty class. Like, when we have cooldowns, we do most of our damage during our cooldowns. Hero is super amazing for us. Like, our cooldown, you know, the aspect of the eagle, it does provide us with 30% damage increase and 20% critical strike increase. So that kind of counterweights the reduced critical strike chance by default by 5%. So that's very important. Like, so when you have your cooldowns, you have 20% from TL set, 4-piece. So you just do insane amount of damage, and it works on AoE, which is the most important part.
Right, because you can get the buff up, and then you can essentially re-drop. Well, I guess that's the question. There's no snapshotting involved with that, correct? So if you have trap out, if you have your explosive trap ticking and you have your caltrops down, it'll automatically just go up by 20%, correct?
For caltrops, yes. Not sure about explosive trap, but I'm pretty sure that's how it works. If there is some snapshotting, it's probably on Spitting Cobra. You should use it as when you have the most caste available. But even that, I'm pretty sure isn't snapshot.
But I would not... I would wonder if Lacerate would snapshot, because what I found out over multiple times, and I'll confirm this here to make sure I'm not a complete dingus, is that the artifact bonus that you get with this for Aspect of the Skylord, which you get the 30% additional damage during Aspect of the Eagle, that damage bonus does not does not snapshot the whole duration of if you hit Strike of the Windlord. Like, that doesn't... Not Strike of the Windlord. That's a joke. The, no, I can't think of it now. The, right here. The freaking, Fury of the Eagle. Even though it's getting a new animation, too. But if you cast Fury of the Eagle, and in the 4-second channel, you lose Skylord, you lose the 30% damage on those ticks, correct?
Yes. But, I mean... You do lose them, but you never should use your artifact ability in the first place during Eagle. It's a huge DPS loss, because, let's be honest here, our artifact ability is complete. Well, design. You know, game design. Good game design. That's what it is. It does exactly the same damage as Free Mongoose Bite. So, like, you lose the damage on periodic ticks. And yes, that's bad. And you just generally don't use it during cooldown. So it's never an issue, really.
Oh, so you actually don't... Because I've been doing that wrong then. I've always been building up during Eagle and then hitting Fury when I have 6 stacks and I have 4 seconds left on the Skylord buff. So you
Oh,
don't.
um,
I mean, I guess I'm AoEing at the times like in Karazhan, so that's probably
yes,
why
for AoE, it's fine. It's
okay.
fine.
Okay.
But like how it works, Mongoose Bite does the same amount of damage on one target as 3 Mongoose Bites. The problem is Mongoose Bite is one big chunky attack. If it crits, it does a lot of damage.
Okay.
But because it's a periodic amount of damage or 3 seconds, and with small chunks, if we crit, the damage isn't nearly as high, and because our cooldown gives us 20% chance extra to crit, you can see where this is going. It's better to press 3 Mongoose Bites extra instead of artifact ability.
Oh, okay.
Because on average, it's going to give you more damage.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah, for pure single target. Okay. That makes sense. Chunky.
But
yeah.
for AoE, you just use our abilities.
Okay. So I was making sure I'm not a complete dingus. Okay, that's fair. So the next little bit here is so legendaries and trinkets. So I'm going to bring back up this is all written out as well on the Icy Veins guide. But the one thing I wanted to bring up, Azor, are you awake? Don't fall asleep on me.
I'm here.
Is chat was saying earlier, they were like, why is the Night Looming Frond a BIS trinket for survival? So we're in the trinket and legendary section. So, I mean, Phi, do you want to open this first, or did Azortharion need to fix this in the guide? Because survival doesn't really attack that fast.
We can have a back and forth about it.
Okay.
Well,
yeah.
I'm going to answer this question because we don't auto-attack fast enough for the trinket to be good, but let Azor to explain.
Well, of course, it benefits from a higher or lower, I should say, auto attack timer. But there's nothing that seems to, and I think it's not because the trinket is good, but I think it's because outside the Draught of Souls, there are not very many better alternatives, especially Nighthold and in general.
Right.
So it's a bit of the same case like Beast Mastery, the aspect of the wild cooldown reduction. It's not that great, but it's the best you can get for the eye level anyway. And it's the same here. So the fact that, survival has a 3.6 second auto attack timer base, while the other specs both have a 3-second timer, this is accounted for, and it does still appear to be the best trinket. Although if you look at it on a per eye level basis, you can see in the simulated trinket list that Bloodthirsty Instinct is rearing its pretty head again. And of course, with haste being such a godly stat for survival, the haste proc and the high uptime of that on the Bloodthirsty Instinct really helps out survival. And I'd say that it's probably the trinket more people will have along with the haste stat sticks than the Night Blooming Frond. But if you do have the choice between all the trinkets on a silver platter in front of you and they're all at the mythic item level, you would still pick the Frond. But, it doesn't always work out that way.
Yeah, because I'm looking at down here, I mean, you're looking at a 905 Frond in your sim is at 543k. But even what my hunter has, she has an Eye of Command at 860, and it's only 10k DPS difference. So even a Karazhan trinket now, because the eye level cap can Titan Forge all the way up to 925, it seems like there's other options. I mean, these trinket sims are so close together. If you go from the top and down 10k, there are so many trinkets in here that you could still use, and that's sort of the problem or blessing or curse of Legion, is that people ask about trinkets all the time, but really there's the best and then everything else is just right underneath it, because there's not a huge fall off.
Yeah, and the Eye of Command with the set bonus is only marginally, it's 5k behind.
Yeah.
Best in slot kinda Nighthold trinkets. So yeah. The Cell of War watching.
Go ahead.
The thing about that is, for survival, the trinkets, none of them are really major except Bloodthirsty Instincts. But the trinkets, you should use trinkets which make your gameplay smoother and help you achieve a goal specifically. And that's why I think for example, Memento from More Souls is one of the better trinkets you can get at survival. Because in most situations it provides you haste, mastery, and crit, which are all excellent for what you want to do. Haste gives you more blocks, Mastery gives you more blocks, you need more blocks. Haste makes the spec feel and play smoother. And crit is just generally nice because Monk's Bite is very, very high damage in one ability, and if it crits, it can crit like 3 million. So it's significant.
Yeah, that seems fair.
And Memento is not on the list, if I remember correctly, still.
Oh, yeah, I'm not seeing it here. What's that going? What's that on here?
But the problem with Memento, you need to get it like fairly high Titan Forged, but if you have like 885 plus, it's probably going to be your best in slot Nighthold Trinket along with BTI.
Well, this is the weird problem with that, is that the raw stat of the Memento versus the Entwined Elemental Foci, which is basically Nighthold's version of the exact same trinket. It procs the exact same things for longer, but it's just a flat secondary stat stick, not a primary stat stick that goes with it, so it's already weaker. So hopefully in this trinket balance hotfix pass, maybe coming up soon, they actually make the Elemental Foci the natural successor to the Anger Boda, because having to farm for that on essentially almost every spec in the damn game, because it's so good, is really annoying, Blizzard. So
you don't say.
But how about anything about legendaries real quick before we move on? There's a list of cures here that I'm bringing up on the screen, but if you want to go through...
Well, I'm going to go over very quickly because survival doesn't depend at all on legendaries to do good. Like, you don't really need them. Like, Zell's Call of the Wild, it's your best in slot, still best in slot after the nerf. It reduces the cooldown of Total, Cheetah, and your Eagle, which is your DPS cooldown, by 35%, which is still excellent. It gives you more burst. If it gives you an extra eagle in a fight, it's like super good. Same for marks and boots, as we thought before, you know, all the changes, and I presume still. The second best legendary is probably going to be, let me find it, Blindus. As funny as that sounds.
Yeah.
For most people, because of how much of a secondary stat stick it is. It's 4,500 stats. But because our class, we want the agility most of all, but all the stats are nice. There's no dump stat, except mastery after 15% if you have 2 sets. Like, all stats are very equal to each other. The haste obviously being much better than ours, but still not that much. So it's Cole, then Plydus, and then it's Boots. Nothing very trapping threats, because if you use Cutlops, they're actually second best in slot. If you don't use Cutlops, they're third. They just provide you with such a huge amount of focus regeneration that you can basically use Frankenslack on cooldown, and it makes Animal Instincts battle, and it makes Moknafal battle, so it just makes the spec smoother.
Wait, when...
Everything else is situational.
For Caltrops, does it trigger every 6 seconds, or only once?
No, it regals on pull. It regals when it drops and blocks on the boss.
Okay, but because you can drop it every 15 to 20 seconds, essentially, you gain the 25 focus every time, right?
Well, no. It only blocks on, like, basically when the trap lands, if something stands in it, it blocks. Like, it's hard to explain, because it's like a ticking dot.
But is it proc per target that triggers it, or just once?
No, once.
Okay, but every time you drop a new Caltrops, you'll get the energy back again from the boots, right?
Yes.
Okay,
it's
that's
25 focus spell trap. You can use freezing trap, you can use Caltrops or Tal trap, and you can explosive trap. So it's actually a fair bit of focus region, but it's third best in slot if you don't use Caltrops. So it goes like Cole, Plydus, Boots, and when every single hour legendary situational. Probably the chest is one of the better ones, because Butchery is so strong and it increases the damage of Butchery. For example, on Gul'dan, it's really good for killing the eyes. Just stockpiling with buff, because it doesn't have any timer related to it, and then just going on all out with cooldowns.
Okay.
But that's legendary for survival, like a couple good ones, and everything else is just stats.
Fair enough. And you wanted to go over, for closing thoughts, the rule of thumb, the secondary stat priority you said was a little weird, so walk me through that.
Okay, so there's 2 builds, generally, which are very popular among people in survival channel. There's a heavy stacking of versatility, which is fine until you get full set. And then there's heavy stacking of haste, which is our best stat. It makes the spec play smoother. It makes everything faster, and it synergizes very well with our Fallen 2 set. Before the full set, if you use Caltrops and Expert Clapper, versatility is like Abzal as your best stat. But as soon as you get full set, haste becomes predominantly the best stat you can get. Like at 30%, it's still your best stat. On if you sim yourself, like 30% and up is good. It synergizes with some of our talents because we have scale of haste, like speaking Cobra. The traps mostly scale of versatility, but Cobra scales with versatility and haste. And full set is just like you need so much focus and you need so much global cooldowns in your Mongoose window, because haste it increases the amount of global cooldowns you can get per Mongoose Fury window. Like you familiar because you play survival as your old. Like Mongoose Fury window, it's a very limited amount of time, and you need to fit everything in that amount of time.
Right. I think didn't crit used to be super important, so now what's the what is the optimal? Because people are going to have their 4 sets soon, regardless of what you raid, because LFR has 4 sets now. So is it like haste, crit?
I would say it's
verse mastery
haste,
or
versatility equals crit, and then mastery. Mastery being priority until like 13%, because the 2 set is so strong you always want it to hit. And at 13% it's high enough. Well, it's going to block like 4 out of 5 chances.
Sure. Azor wrote up a whole bunch of stuff about the basics for stats, and then like there's a soft cap here for everything else, and yeah. Okay, that's fair. Because you definitely with that 15% mastery, and then you can forget about it, because then with your 2-piece, you've got a 90% chance every flanking strike to give you a mongoose. So that's really, you don't need anything else.
At 16 and 64%, I think it's 100% chance. So like 15 is 1%, 1.5% off from being 100%.
Right. So it's pretty easy to get to essentially a hard cap, and then forget about it. So that sounds good to me. Anything else you want to leave the survival hunters out there with? Any tips or secrets or suggestions to remember before we move on to marksmanship?
Don't let people tell you what spec to play, most of all. I mean, you are just as good, if not better, than other 2 specs for some situations, like Mythic Plus. Nothing beats cooldowns plus Butchery in Mythic Plus right now, except maybe Affliction Volks if we get lucky. Like, that's like, from a serious point of view, like from someone who does a lot of Mythic Plus, like you beat everyone in almost every situation if you play well.
Yeah, I have a blast on mine, so there definitely was a stigma going in, and I know that we haven't really added, I know if you like playing ranged DPS specs, Blizzard hasn't added any in the history of the game. They've taken one away from you and have anything else. So we will we'll see if they ever add any more range specs in the game in the future. And no, they're not going to add a Demon Hunter range spec. Stop asking. All right.
But what if they will? Huh?
But what if they will? I don't know. Then I'll eat a grilled cheese sandwich, not grilled. I don't know. I'm not going to eat it. Something gross. So, Marksman time. Azor, are you ready? Hello. Yes, hello.
Hello. Yeah, I'm ready.
So this is probably what most hunters are playing right now, despite the fact that every hunter quit the game recently, and now is coming back on Tuesday. So, what we talked about Marksman earlier, but I put here. So I put how are things, and then does Marksman have too many micro? Because I was watching you the other day when you were doing your DPS test on your live stream, and. Do you have too many? Because Enhancement has a couple of micro buffs, right? And I was like, okay, we have like 4, but 2 are tied to 1 button, so we technically have 3. But then you have like 15 micro buffs. I don't even know what's going on your screen. Is there too many things to track and play around with Marksman, or you just kind of like forget about most of them?
It's not as bad as my spaceship makes it out to be, I think. It's not a...
Jeez. Okay.
It's not so much the quantity of stuff to figure out. I mean, the only thing you really have to care about is your vulnerable window. Okay, so the information you need to be fed to your brain constantly to play the spec, ideally, is you need to know like your focus. You need to know the timing on your vulnerable. how much time there's left, and then you need to know what the status is on your marking targets, which allows you to cast Hunter's the Mark Shot, which allows you another vulnerable window, essentially.
Okay.
And the whole goal is to, with the Patient Sniper, which is sort of the cookie cutter single target build, but as we'll explore later, maybe not used as often as it might seem like you might want to, is to take advantage of the Patient Sniper talent by casting aim shots, casting as many high damage aim shots in the end of vulnerable as possible. That's the whole spec, essentially, because you have so many procs of marking targets that you can essentially get 100% uptime on vulnerable. So it's just about getting the most out of your focus in those windows. And it's not just about getting it out in those windows, it's about getting it into a specific window in the window, if that makes sense, as in the end of the vulnerable debuff.
Now you bring that up right now. I'm going to bring up the talent on the board because the next part we'll go to, but you bring that up because Patient Sniper is kind of the crux of the spec, right? Because...
Yes.
Okay.
It's sort of what separates the men from the boys, or however you wanna call it.
Oh.
Because there's a lot you can play it like decently well. You can just cast your mark shots, your aim shots as they become available to you within vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are sort of cerebral about it and wait until the end, you can get 10, 20, 40, 30, 40% more damage out of them, and that really adds up over the fight. And there's a lot of RNG in the spec, but over a fight's duration, there's a lot of room for sort of being the better player by getting more out of your aim shots and Patient Sniper and everything.
Okay. How long does the vulnerable window last again?
It's 7 seconds.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, a bit less because Mark Shot also triggers the global cooldown, so you're gonna have a 5 point something to play with. But the duration.
Oh, go ahead. No, so every time you reset the vulnerable window, Patient Sniper resets then, correctly?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you don't need to track Patient Sniper itself because it's completely based on the time left on vulnerable.
Okay.
And so because focus is the resource that it is, you're always going to have, the amount you start with, and like your total, your whole focus pool for an entire encounter is going to be what you start with plus everything you generate minus anything that you overcap with. So with the knowledge that our focus pool for an encounter is mostly static, we got to make every bit of focus count for as much as possible. And there's been a lot of talk about do I want X% haste to get 2 aim shots in a vulnerable or 3? But the truth is that if we could get away with only casting 1 aim shot per vulnerable in the very end, we would do that. But we can't because we have too much focus to do that without overcapping. But the whole point is to increase the average damage of our aim shots, because we only get X amount of aim shots in an encounter, so we just want to make each of them do as much damage as possible.
Sure.
And of course, the second of 2 aim shots in a vulnerable is going to be the one that deals the most damage. It's going to get 100%, 170% extra damage, while the previous one might get 160, 150.
Sure. And not to chat might not know if you're not all in the numbers here, but the multiplicative benefit of that extra 20% on the damage range of an aim shot is pretty ridiculous, because I was seeing you get 1.4 to 1.6 million crits or 2.4 million. It's a huge swing getting it done properly.
Yeah, and part of that is also True Shot, which increases your critical strike damage by 50%. So that's how you can get on a single target, a perfect aim shot crit towards the end of vulnerable with True Shot, 2.5, 3 million, right?
Right.
You can get really nuts, and you can do a lot of those, especially with the 4 pieces we'll talk about.
So walk me through talent stuff here.
Yes.
And obviously we can just omit 75s and 45s because we've gone over those and the other ones just fine.
Yep.
But so talk to me about how awful Lone Wolf is and how you take careful aim.
So in the level 15 tier, there's no reason to ever pick anything but Lone Wolf in any realistic raiding or Mythic Plus scenario ever. For better or for worse.
Yeah, it's so sad. I mean, we knew this was gonna happen, and you obviously cannot take Lone Wolf to have a pet if you're like PvPing or if you are leveling, but it just feels weird that you like forcibly have 2 dead talents that they put all this time into like making do something, and you don't take them.
They used to be baseline for marksmanship.
Oh, both of them used to be?
No, Lone Wolf used to be baseline.
Oh, well, yeah.
So it wasn't. Yeah, so we actually had a real choice because there wasn't one. Yeah,
oh, that's right.
And maybe they should have stuck with that.
People complained during beta that they wanted their pet back. So, yeah,
exactly. So there's 2 warring sides of that whole debacle. And that's basically all there is to it. I mean, careful aim. It only affects targets that are on high health. But you can only really think of like single boss dungeon encounters that work that way, like Odin in Horse of Valor, and Helya to an extent in the Maw of Souls. But you don't spec around the final boss of a dungeon. It just doesn't work that way.
Here's a good suggestion that comes up in chat. Why isn't Lone Wolf baseline, and then this talent here gives you your pet back? And then
that's how it used to be, I think.
Yeah.
I think that's how it used to be.
Yeah, I don't know. People, like, I don't know. Because when I saw Marksman coming out of beta when I was doing my testing, and they were like, Marksmaners don't have pets anymore, period. You can take Black Arrow, which is totally fine for leveling, because you can Black Arrow the crap out of things, and your little plagued boar taunts the crap out of what you're hitting. But I was like, okay, that's unique. Survival fights in tandem in melee with their beast, with their pet. Beast Mastery summons more, a la, zoo style, and then Marksman, no pets. And there was this that terrible outcry, and I really wish Blizzard were stuck to their guns and kept the fantasy, no pets for Marksman, period. That would have been so much better, but oh well.
Yeah, that's the lay of the land, for better or for worse. So level 30 is actually a bit of an interesting choice. So there's True Aim, which is like if you're just hitting a dummy, that's what's going to give you the most damage. And it basically it discourages switching targets, because whenever you start hitting a target with your arcane and aim shots, they stack debuff on the target that increases the damage those shots deal to the target by 2%, stacking up to 10 times. So basically, it's a talent that increases the damage of arcane and aim shot by 20%, which is a lot because aim shot does a lot of damage. But of course, like, you have to rebuild the 10 stacks on whenever you switch your target.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a lot in Nighthold. So it's the best option for patchwork, right? And fights where you only might change your targets like 2 or 3 times in the whole thing. But if it's sort of a regular thing, changing targets, you switch to Lock and Load, which is an ancient talent by now. Mm-hmm. It has done different things for different specs, but now it is gives you ranged auto attacks, an 8% chance to give you 2 free and instant aim shot cast. And like, the relationship between these 2 talents is just about tuning, really. And of course, Lock and Load doesn't suffer from any sort of target switching.
Right.
Then there's Black Arrow.
Yeah, which is amazing. That's what I was going to
say. Well, Black Arrow is pretty good. It's not like for raiding. The problem with it used to be that it cost 40 focus before. Now it only costs 10.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And aim shot is so like bread and butter for marksmanship that you can't really afford to introduce a lot of extra globals or focus spendage that isn't aim shot, because aim shot is such an efficient cast along with the mark shot. So that's why you don't really pick it. It's decent for leveling. You definitely can't pick True Aim for leveling for obvious reasons, and Lock and Load is a bit inconsistent, so it's a good leveling choice essentially. But for raiding, it's not really worth picking in any situation. It's not easier to use than Lock and Load, and you might find it more enjoyable though, but yeah, not really worth picking.
I was just scrolling over aim shot real quick. This is sort of an off tangent. Can we talk about this? Might be like old math, or it's math that's caked into the tooltip because it's like accounting for before you get your Thosera. But can we talk about why aim shot reads that it is 0.619 times 275% of weapon damage, or 0.038 times level times 275% weapon damage plus 0.238 times 275 weapon damage, or just 275 weapon damage as physical damage. What the f is that?
Okay, so the only thing that matters to a level 110 hunter is that aim shot does 275%.
What?
You know, based on, and it's to do with, I think it's their attempt to scale it for leveling.
I get holy.
Like
we talked about
if
if you're a patron and you get to listen to the behind the scenes podcast, we talk about this, that there's like a big tangent about how Blizzard makes things so much more difficult for themselves for some reason with certain abilities, that they put all this math behind it, that if you don't know it exists, you don't care, but once you know it's there, you're just like, what? Why? So this is one of the okay, continue then. Tell me how good Sentinel is.
Okay, so yeah, okay. Sentinel is not worth picking. It's essentially a 1 minute cooldown that gives you 4 mark shots a minute, which is not a lot. It's like maybe in a mark shot in my decently fancy gear might be like 700, 800k, and it's going to give you 4 of those because that's essentially all it does. It you place a target like a reticle on the ground in like a 10-yard radius, and all enemies in that area will get marked with Hunter's Mark, which allows you to cast mark shot on them in 6-second intervals. And it does that like every 6 seconds. So it does it like when you cast it, and then at 6 seconds after, and then another 6 seconds after that, and then when it finishes after 18 seconds. And it's meant, I don't know what it's meant to be. It's meant to be an AoE talent of some kind, of some sustained AoE thing, but it's just terrible for absolutely everything.
So that's why we take meme shot.
That's why we take patient sniper for, I'll talk about meme shot, of course. Patient sniper for, getting the big aim shots, mostly on single bosses, single target. An explosive shot for everything that involves sort of short-term multi-target, especially on priority targets. And explosive shot is like, it's a skill shot. Like they tried to put a skill shot into WoW, because when you click it once, it sends like a rocket flying from ahead of you. Mm-hmm. And when you press it again, it explodes. And it deals damage to enemies based on how close it is to them when you press it. But of course, the pragmatic way about going about it is just to stand in melee and hit it twice.
So it blows up in your face, yeah.
Yeah, so it blows up in your face and all the mobs around you, which is not very convenient always. But if you can make it work, especially in Mythic Plus, it's an extremely powerful, ridiculous ability for any sort of multi-target. And there's so much AoE in Nighthold that Explosive Shot is probably going to be the choice for more fights in Nighthold than Patient Sniper will.
Yeah, so, I believe it. Yeah. It's 1,000% attack power as fire damage, so it ignores armor. Yeah, every 30 seconds, you just disengage into melee range and just and then walk out. Yeah.
In my gear, it's 800k per target, non-crit.
Oh, good gracious me.
So, and if it crits, it's absolutely ridiculous. Specific examples, the AoE phases on a Spellblade, the lashes on Botanist. So when they spawn, you can hop over there because they're already sort of in range and just blow your explosive shot in your own face, and you'll do 2 million to them immediately. And for Mythic Plus, because it's so front-loaded and immediate, it's just very good for dealing with packs, and it has a 30-second cooldown. It line up with most things. Yeah, so most Mythic Plus packs start with you going into melee and spamming your aim shot button to blow up.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, Patient Sniper, single target.
That's a weird tier that it has a skill shot, AoE-ish single target, and then Sentinel, and then Patient Sniper, which is fully single target, but that's a weird tier. 75s again, pick what you want, CC, camouflage, etc. And let's go to 90 and then 100.
Yes, so level 90 is, we talked about Barrage, and it's the same thing for Marksmanship.
Right.
You might use it. It actually got an 80% damage buff for BM specifically. Like they said, it does 80% more damage for BM now. That is mostly to bring it on level with Marksmanship's version of it, because Marksmanship's Mastery increases the damage of all focus spending abilities, which of course includes Barrage. Anyway, tangent. It's only really useful for indiscriminate burst AoE, much like Beast Mastery. And Volley and Crows are extremely close on a single target, and Volley is the completely passive option that can also cleave. So for more fights than Crows, you will be using Volley, as it's the very marginally worse single target choice, but much better for any sort of cleave. It basically just makes sure auto shots cleave and hit like a truck.
Sure.
Yeah, and Murder of Crows, same old boring. You use it if you're just fighting one target for the whole thing.
Now, I had to ask about that with sniper training, and as you gain more gear and have higher mastery as it all goes, that the damage of all focus spenders scales up. So obviously Barrage will scale up, and the new Barrage with its whole like 50% nonsense we talked about earlier, how does the range effect of sniper training work with Barrage, because it's the weird 40-yard range, but it's like a 120-degree cone, and well, not a cone. It's like it draws like a rectangle from your right and your left arms, and then it has like a really wide arc in front of you. Does that just get improved forward with your sniper
just
training?
Gets improved forward. Yeah.
Okay.
One funny trick that is not as relevant anymore, but used to be, is that to avoid barrage ninja pulling, you can now, like in Legion, you can set the distance at which nameplates for enemies will be drawn. And because marksmanship's range is so long, it's a pretty good tip to set your nameplate distance to your actual shot distance. And you can avoid barrage ninja pulls this way by, like, if they're set to the same thing, if you can't see the nameplate of something in the distance, your barrage won't hit it. So that's when you know you're safe. Yeah, not as relevant anymore because we don't use barrage all the time, but when we did, it was pretty useful.
Okay. And then, okay, last little talent bit here. You basically are, I mean, I was so happy that they removed the total shit show of the original trick shot from beta, because that was just it was like kill flip, was it? That was just not.
Yeah, that was unique.
But anyway, go through your 100s here, and then.
Yeah. So Sidewinders is no longer the optimal choice for any specific. Well, for specific situation, you might say Mythic Hellia, because if you want more slime damage. But it does inferior single target and multi-target damage to both the other two options. These three talents, they have sort of their own niches, and the trick shot is sort of turning your single target, both the same for Sidewinders and trick shot, they turn your single target into multi-target damage. And trick shot does it by making your aim shots cleave, essentially. And Sidewinders does it by making your primary focus regenerator also cleave and also mark all targets. It sort of merges arcane and multi-shot. And basically, you don't pick Sidewinders. So, and you don't even after the buff to it that's upcoming. In most situations, you're actually going to want piercing shot. It's a bit worse than trick shot for if you were to like do a simulation on cleave. And it's also a bit worse on single target. So why would you pick it? Well, it's a case of sustained cleave has never really been a huge thing. And the thing is, for any cleave fight, essentially, you're going to want explosive shot, which reduces the damage of your aim shot significantly because you're giving up patient sniper. And trick shot increases aim shot damage. So that sort of works against each other. Which means that, in effect, most fights you will want to pick piercing shots for any sort of ad fight or any sort of cleavy, semi-target switchy fight. And for pure single target or sustained cleave over a long time, that doesn't really exist in Nighthold, you would pick trick shot.
Yeah,
single target exists, but yeah, sustained cleave doesn't.
It's a weird one. Piercing shot's getting a new graphic as well. A lot of new hunter graphics for all 3 specs in 7.2, and the new piercing shot really helps show the piercing effect because the arrow continues to travel and you get really see it really well done in the new graphic. It's really nice, but a piercing shot obviously has a positional requirement because it's not very wide. Is it only like 3 yards wide or 4 yards wide?
Yeah, it's almost just a straight line.
Yeah, so you have to like position to make sure it goes through multiple targets. But that's what I was looking at in the new graphic, that it would be really good. But yeah, because you were talking about true aim earlier, and if you're going like this full single target build, like trick shot, patient sniper, true aim kind of stuff, right? Like that. All these things that on your stupid weak auras are like all these stacking buffs is why I was talking about this. But yeah, a lot of these things just kind of like exist, and all you really pay attention to is patient sniper. But if you take the AoE build like you're just talking about now with the with piercing shot for your single target 30-second cooldown basically, which then you get into the whole point of that Marksman sort of has the Havoc Demon Hunter approach, that you have all these buttons that are like a one-off, like a 30-second cooldown here or 40-second cooldown here, and you hit them whenever they come off cooldown when you line up properly. So that's that looks.
It's very front-loaded, and it doesn't. Because most of your trash pack damage is done by the time you've cast both piercing shot and explosive shot.
Right.
Yeah, and you can use both to great effect, like Crows the ads if some spawn a bit close to each other. Mark them up, because piercing shot is affected by vulnerable as well. It's the only other ability except aim shot. So mark them up with vulnerable, get some focus, cast piercing shot, and one shot like 3 ads at once.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I like hearing, and this is like the thing I always toot my own horn about on the show. I like hearing when there are options, and it was kind of glossed over when Phi and I were talking about survival. But if you noticed, and Phi can back me up on this, survival only has like 2 talents you just don't take. Everything else you can take. Like throwing axes and aspect of the beast are the 2 you just like, nah, forget about those. Which is great to hear about, because it's always sad when I interview people on the show and they give me 1 talent build and there's no options outside of that 1 build. It makes me so sad. So I'm always glad to hear that is a thing that you have. That's the whole point of this damn talent system. It's only taken 2 expansions to get there. So, but I guess I'll bring up Foster Raw now. Which, so I actually think that we kind of go over all of these, and I wanted to bring up this in chat because we are like getting at time here. And there'll be links in the description, and these are of course things you see in the class Discord channels. Is there are these leveling paths for all of the weapons, right? And they're all on the Icy Veins guides. So that's why, if you were curious about, I don't really go into the artifacts as much right now. Obviously, as the show moves forward and the new double relics come out, we'll sort of talk about them more. But the artifact stuff is a little bit very just cut and dry mathy when you go look at the different artifact traits and talent sections of each of these. You know, you go up here to World of Warcraft, you go to classes, and you have your 300 specs, right? And everything else on Icy Veins, for example. It's a lot easier to look at this section and then look at your path, right? And then the theory crafters that put this stuff together, they talk about relic choice, like really simple stuff. So I've kind of omitted that section from the show notes as we've gone through here, because everything else is a lot more tangible. So if you are looking for that information about the artifacts, if you're new to the spec, or you're thinking about playing a hunter, or of course any other spec in the future, that's where that information is going to be, because these guides are so well put together, and it's very easy to just look through there for the artifact stuff. But there'll be links in the description box on YouTube for those. But that's why I wanted to say we're gonna walk past Foster Raw right now and bring up legendary items and trinkets for Marksman, unless you have anything more about talents.
Nothing else to note. We can move on to legendaries.
Yeah, sure. Go for it.
So it's not as legendary dependent as Beast Mastery, Shoulder's Belt, and everything, but it still has some really good legendaries. The two big ones is the newly added 715 legendary, the MK2 Gyroscopic Stabilizer.
Mm-hmm.
It basically makes every other aimed shot you cast be castable while moving, and also have a 15% increased crit chance.
Ooh.
Yeah, and both of those things are like one of them combines to make the spec a bit more bearable, especially when using, the pure single target true aim, patient sniper, and trick shot, where like 50% of your damage is just aim shots, and you want to make them as big as possible. And any sort of movement can really screw with your rhythm. It makes that more forgiving. But just having what is essentially a 7.5% average damage increase for your aim shots is huge, and it makes it the best legendary by a fair bit, at least on a single target. The other one that's big is the Ullus Snowfeather shoes that are essentially just another true shot cooldown reduction. Whenever you cast it says whenever you cast like a damaging shot, but in reality, like a lot of shots are omitted from that description for no reason. But it is essentially like a 45 roughly cooldown reduction on a true shot, which is a main really large AoE and single target cooldown.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, these two, because true shot increases your critical strike damage by 50%, and so combining more true shots from the boots with the 15% critical strike chance on aim shot from the gloves makes those two the best combo, and they go together really well. For single target anyway. Then there is the War Belt of the Sentinel Army, which is basically makes multi-shot stack a damage buff on your next aim shot, a bit like the Butcher's Brown apron for survival, which makes Mongoose Bite stack up so that Carver or Butchery does more damage. And it's extremely powerful with a trick shot. Especially for like sustained cleave with trick shot, because you gotta cast multi-shot instead of arcane shot on multiple targets all the time. So you will keep up stacking this buff, and it's one stack per target you hit. And it's like 10% damage on the next aim shot per target, and you might have to spam quite a few multi-shots to get there. So especially on AoE, you can get like 200% extra damage aim shots, and they already do a lot of damage. And with trick shot, they will also cleave. So essentially, you can get these like 6 million aimed shots on multiple targets, and it's absolutely ridiculous if you get to stack it up.
So I was going to wait for you to bring up the War Belt, because this is like one of the new hotnesses, and with Trick Shot, because I wanted to bring up the way that Trick Shot paths is sort of like chain lightning, that it doesn't cleave everything around the target. It hits a number of targets that are to all vulnerable targets, but doesn't it have a way that if it bounces, which is unfortunate because you can't really control it directly, but if it bounces sort of like towards the edge of a pack of mobs, it won't bounce back, right? Like it stops and just fizzles kind of thing. Does it still do that, or does it hit everything?
It hits everything that's vulnerable. And what is vulnerable is determined by what you mark with your marked shot.
Sure.
Which is determined by what has Hunter's Mark, which is determined by multi-shot. So
right.
It's actually multi-shot that matters in this equation. And it's very simple because it's just 8 yards around the target.
Okay.
So you hit a target, and everything within 8 yards, and then you press Hunter's Mark. Then you press Mark Shot to get vulnerable on all of them, and then you Trick Shot. And regardless if they've spread like to China after you've cast and marked them, your aim shot will still hit multiple targets across the room if you have made them vulnerable.
Okay, I wanted to make sure that was working, because I remember back in the day when I was testing that the bounce wouldn't bounce all the time properly. It would just like, if it got too far away from the next mob to hit that was vulnerable, it wouldn't bounce. So If that's not a case, and you're not seeing that.
Thankfully,
then,
not the case anymore.
Okay, that's fine, because that's why this belt is and because this is very much in the time right now that we live in Nighthold. Of course, as the next raids roll out, we don't know if we're gonna have fights that are all the similar. Obviously, it's a very much a thing, but 7 of 10 bosses in Nighthold all have just BS cleave or AoE phases. Yeah. So you can do some serious gaming with certain legendaries for sure.
And it's kind of nice to have these free legendaries. Like the boots are always good, and Warbell is really good for multi-target, and the gloves are really good for single target.
Sounds good.
So that's pretty nice. And then there's legendary trinket, which is sort of it's kind of mediocre for all specs. It's usually behind the DPS, other DPS legendaries for all specs.
So before we get too much over time, I wanted you to go over why you have Drought of Souls for Marksman, because it's a melee trinket. Can we talk about this?
That's the same. Well, that's the same case as BM. It's the likely because it's not listed in the best in slot section. Like the simulation is always, and the guide says this. A simulation is always limited by the humans who programmed it. And like just today, I found like until earlier today, explosive shot was doing half damage of what it was supposed to in Simcraft. So there's always something wrong with Simcraft, but it's still a good tool if you know how to use it. Basically, the trinket sim is more of a reflection. It's just as much a reflection of like what is lacking in Simcraft as it is like a genuine comparison. And I had to add like a note about Drought of Souls specifically, because it's kind of a sketchy choice. Even if it was like all the time as good as the Sims would indicate, you would still have the inconvenience of moving to melee, and marksmanship is not that mobile anymore. So yeah, it doesn't really work out that way, and that's why it's not the BIS trinket. It's just the one that seems the highest.
But if you're running the meme shot, you can run in, blow up in your face, and then hit the trinket.
Yeah, mark them up, vulnerable, piercing shot, run in, explosive shot, pop the trinket. It works.
Yeah, that's what chat was asking. Did he say something about the meme spec? And that's another thing we've said about it. So yeah, for sure, that is definitely a thing. But I mean, is there anything else you wanted to add about Marksman? I mean, I brought the trinket sims up on the screen. You have Convergence of Fates listed. How is the RPPM for that pretty good for True Shot?
It's pretty decent. It's like with the boots and the 2-piece bonus, which is also a cooldown reduction on a True Shot, and that we can get really low cooldowns on True Shot, and it makes marksmanship really, really powerful just in general for everything.
If you have the boots as well, is what the caveat
If you have the boots as well, yeah, that's the caveat, and I don't have them, so I'm a bit upset about that.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's why your damage is so bad, right?
Yeah. I just can't do it without them.
So, rule of thumb, secondary stat priority. Do you have any weird flim-flammy stuff going on with marksmanship like Survival had, or?
I'd say the biggest interesting thing is how uninteresting it is. So a lot of people are like they believe there must be a haste cap worth going for, and it's the most asked question in the marksmanship. Is there a haste cap? Is 9% a haste cap? What about 21.5%? What about 19%? What about 17%? But no, there is no haste cap. It's the third best stat. Don't go below 5%, I guess. But yeah, mastery, crit, haste, versatility. And the weapon damage is ridiculously overpowered, which is why like 2 eye level is better than any trait jump on your weapon.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So just go for eye level on the relics as well.
That's actually the first time I've ever heard that before, because for like enhancement, wind strikes is worth like 5 to 6 eye levels. Yeah, so people that have well, go ahead.
Yeah, the best BM single target trait and multi-target is the 2 different ones. They're worth, I think, furious swipes for beast mastery and 3 targets, which is beast cleave damage, 10%, quite a lot.
Wow.
It's like 18 eye levels.
Excuse me?
Yeah, 18.
18? So you basically never replace that relic. Okay.
Yeah, but only if you're doing Mythic Plus, because you don't spec around Beast Cleave for raiding in general. But the kill command damage increase is worth like 9 eye levels. So, yeah.
So the last two
That's
things,
pretty ridiculous.
we didn't weave in the tier 19 during talent talk. So the tier 19 for Marksman is every 35 focus you spend, which was nerfed, I believe. Every 35
that was
focus.
no, it's the 4-set that was nerfed.
Oh, okay, the 4-set was. So every
We'll talk about
35 focus you spend reduces the cooldown of True Shot by 1 second. So now that plus convergence plus boots. And the
Yeah,
4-piece,
exactly.
the 4-piece is essentially what BM has. It's just that True Shot reduces the cost of all your focus spenders by 15%.
Yeah,
Wow.
and that's what was nerfed, because that number used to be, I don't remember, it was 45 or 50.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, but it was really overpowered before, but they probably over nerfed it a bit, because now the 4-piece is kind of meh. But before, it basically made aim shot almost focus neutral. So you would pop True Shot, and you would get your vulnerable going, and then you would just hammer aim shot forever until your vulnerable ended, and then you would do it again. And you basically were almost stuck at your focus cap because of how OP it was. But now it's like, okay. And the 2-piece bonus is like 30 to 50, depending on RNG and stuff, cooldown reduction. It's a bit funny because they actually work against each other if you think about it. You got to spend focus to reduce the cooldown with the 2-piece, and the 4-piece makes your abilities cost less. But of course, I mean, you can cast more of them, so it kind of evens out, but it's still like, yeah, a bit silly.
Well, it kind of, it one feeds into the other. And that's why I brought up the whole thing that you can compound the 2-piece, the Convergence of Fates, and the boots, which is, I don't know if, I mean, Blizzard nerfed parts of that for Assassination Rogues because they could basically have permanent uptime on Vendetta, which the Vendetta itself is not uptime all the time. It's the stupid daggers, the butter knives, shink, shings can be up all the time, but they've nerfed that a little bit. But has it gone under the radar because they've nerfed Marksman to the ground so much, apparently, that all of these stacking cooldown reductions on True Shot are still okay?
Yeah, essentially.
Okay, fine. And the last thing that I have to ask, because this is mostly a Marksman thing, is I had on here for trinkets, because they fixed a bug with RPPM trinkets, right? And we all lived in this beautiful utopia, even I did for Mythic Plus, of Iran's relaxing ruby.
Yeah.
Is it, and this can go for Phi as well, because Sarla has so many dots that can proc the ruby. The ruby is kind of dead now, isn't it?
Yes. Well, for survival it was that longer.
Oh.
Because at some point they hotfixed it for meta.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't it doesn't cut its proc rate in half, and when it does proc, it still requires stuff to be alive for 6 seconds, which you can't really work with that in a Mythic Plus setting.
I feel like
it was kind of nice sometimes, because before Barrage, every tick of Barrage, which is 8 to 16 per target, could proc, so you could actually have multiple procs going at the same time. If you were lucky.
I feel like they installed the Binding of Isaac troll engine into it, because how many times, and chat can back me up on this, because I used to use one as enhancement, because the auto attacks on Flame Tongue and the dot on the ground from Crashing Storm counts as a ranged attack. Okay. But you're pulling a bunch of mobs Mythic Plus, and your mobs are almost dying, and then the mobs at 6% and Wreath procs. It seems to proc so often when mobs' HP is so low for some reason, and then it just fizzles because everything's dead. Yeah.
But if they made it explode on mob death, it would be overpowered. So they can't win.
But that was the thing I wanted to make sure I brought up, because I know a lot of hunters were a long time were like, "Oh my god, I need a ruby," but now the ruby is just forget about it.
Yeah.
Sadly. Anything else you want to leave? Closing thoughts for marksmanship or anything, essentially, because we're at about 2 hours and 20 minutes here. So.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Well, I'll just say that you don't have to play trick shot, because the meme build is very, very capable and better in many situations, and it's a lot easier to play as well. So yeah, if you really hate the whole trick shot, patient sniper, vulnerable idea, try to just go lock and load, explosive shots, volley, and piercing shot, and try to raid with that, and you'll probably find your love for the spec again.
Sounds good to me. How about you, Phi? You want to leave anything else on the table for hunters out there, survival hunters out there? Anything else you want to end with?
Oh, just give it a try. I mean, it's not going to hurt anything to try a different spec for Marksman BM to try survival and vice versa. Don't be stuck in the, I gotta play this because I have gear for this. Like, it's not the way it works.
Fair enough. Well, I'm sorry, chat. These episodes that are a pure DPS class are kind of hard to wiggle in chat interaction. We brought up chat a couple of times, but we don't have like a Q&A section, essentially. If you have questions, of course, for the hunters, a lot of it can be found. Please, the big thing I will employ and spread out there at every future episode is that just because there are NVPs or Therian math crafters in the Discord channels, don't just keep sending them PMs. Check the pinned messages in the Discord channels, or check, again, a lot of information that has been provided on the show today is brought to you by Icy Veins. You can go check Icy Veins right here in World of Warcraft section, and then you can look at all of the different class guides here for everything. We'll be referencing Icy Veins a lot in the upcoming shows, so check there for more information. And again, of course, all of the invites to... Oh god, it's a crazy white screen. Sorry about that. All the invites to the Discord servers are right there in my channel guide. This is all put together for you if you want to go join the True Shot Lodge or the Hall of the Guardians or wherever. You can also alternatively join my Discord as a non-subscriber. You can talk in the general chat if you have questions for me, upcoming shows, etc. You can also see announcements if you are a subscriber to the channel. Then you, of course, can join the entire thingamajig itself and sync your Twitch to your Discord. But that's one way you can get in touch with me, as well as, of course, all the different Discord communities. It's a great resource. It's out there right now, so please utilize it. But it is time to hit the button. There it is. So thank you all very much for tuning in today to episode 126 for Legion Hunters. A little longer than normal, but these episodes are always the upcoming shows that are like one spec, like Restoration Shaman, Prot Warrior, etc. Those will have a little bit extra topics sprinkled in, but I will aim for them to be a little shorter to offset the balance of that. I want to like talk about Resto Shamans for 2.5 hours, but I only got to talk about Hunters for all 3 specs for 2.5 hours, so those are coming in the future. Resto Shaman is next Sunday, but around the table real quick, we had Phi on the show talking about Survival Hunters. You can go follow him on his brand new Twitter, or of course check out the Survival Hunter guide that he was posting. Links will be in the description box on YouTube. But Phi, it was a pleasure, sir. Thank you very much for your time tonight.
Hey, it was a pleasure. Thank you.
And do you... Yeah. You're in the Discord channel and stuff too, right? So you contribute to that? Okay. That's fair. I mean, you do all the work, right? Azortharion just steals all of your work, right?
I wish.
I'll take
Don't believe his lies.
Oh, don't believe his lies. And there's Azortharion. You can go watch his live stream and his social media stuff over at twitch.tv/Azortharion. Or he's got a Z on the end on Twitter. But thank you again for being on the show, sir. It was a pleasure as always.
Yeah, thanks. Pleasure to be on again.
That was a lot to talk about. I mean...
Yep.
That was a lot.
Episode. My bad.
Yeah. No. I'm fine with it if... It's always, like, there was always things in the bullet list that I could keep going to. We're not dragging it out for any reason. But thank you all very much for watching. Next week, again, is going to be Restoration Shaman. And there's some Prot Warrior coming up. And then there's, of course, Mythic Gul'dan World First eventually. Then there's going to be a community episode with the Lost Codex guys that make the Lost Codex YouTube channel. And then there's something else. Maybe. Could I interview Spazzy? Who would do that? That's sort of a side announcement that the community specials I'll be doing on the show in the future will not only be about WoW. So, if you're in my Discord channel and have suggestions for other YouTubers to interview, maybe I can do that. I don't know. Who knows? I interviewed Duck Sauce before. He doesn't even play WoW anymore. Who's that guy? Jeez. But thank you all very much for watching. I will see you all here next week, or of course on the live streams during the week. Bunch of Gul'dan kills tomorrow, like 15 of them. So thank you very much for watching. Trust in your seal of RNG gold, or now 50k artifact power, which softens the blow a bit, but still kind of sucks. And until next week, everybody, thank you very much for being here. And bye. Bye. The other guests can't wave, but they can say bye.
Bye.